Welcome to another calm night of storytelling. Before we dive in, share a Reddit story that made you feel something. And if these stories help you unwind, consider subscribing. It's free and keeps these videos coming. Now get comfortable and enjoy the stories. My boyfriend keeps dragging me to his hangouts, then ignores me, and now says I'm embarrassing him for not going. I never thought I would be the kind of person who ends up writing one of these posts, but I feel like I'm losing my grip on what's normal and what's not. I'm a 26F, and my boyfriend Ryan is 28M. We've been together for a little over 2 years, and for most of that time, I thought we had a solid relationship. We met through mutual friends in Chicago, and in the beginning, he was attentive and thoughtful and always made me feel included in his life. That's part of why what's happening now feels so confusing and honestly kind of humiliating. Ryan is very social. He has a big group of friends from college and work, and they hang out a lot. Game nights, bars, watching sports, random house parties, you name it. I'm more on the introverted side, but I still enjoy socializing, and I've always made an effort to get along with his friends. Early in our relationship, he would invite me to everything and actually stick by me. He'd introduce me properly, check in with me, and make sure I wasn't just standing there alone. I felt like his partner, not an accessory. About a year ago, something shifted. He started insisting that I come to every hangout with him, even when I said I was tired or had work the next morning. If I declined, he'd say things like, "Come on, don't be boring," or "Why don't you want to be part of my life?" So I started going even when I didn't really want to. The problem is that once we got there, Ryan would basically disappear. I'd arrive with him, say hi to people like Jake and Matt and Lauren, grab a drink, and then Ryan would drift off. He'd end up on the other side of the room talking to his buddies or glued to a game on TV. Sometimes he wouldn't look at me for an hour or more. If I tried to join the conversation, he'd respond, but it felt forced, like I was interrupting. There were nights where I'd sit on my phone just to look busy, because no one was really engaging with me, and Ryan seemed perfectly fine without me. The first few times I brushed it off. I told myself I was being sensitive, and that this is just how group hangouts work. But it kept happening. One night, we went to his friend Tyler's apartment. I barely knew most of the people there. Ryan vanished within 10 minutes. I tried talking to a couple of girls, but they were deep into their own conversation. After almost 2 hours of feeling invisible, I asked Ryan if we could leave soon. He rolled his eyes and said we just got here, even though we hadn't. When we got home, he accused me of killing the vibe and said I embarrassed him by acting awkward. That word stuck with me. Embarrassing. I tried to explain how I felt. I told him that when he drags me to these hangouts and then ignores me, it makes me feel unwanted and uncomfortable. I said I'd rather just not go sometimes if he's going to treat me like I'm not there. Ryan got defensive. He said I was expecting him to babysit me and that his friends noticed how quiet I was and thought it was weird. According to him, my discomfort was my own fault. After that conversation, I started declining more invitations. Not all of them, but some. I'd say things like, "I'm going to stay in tonight," or "You go have fun, and I'll see you later." That's when things escalated. Ryan started telling me that his friends were asking why I never come anymore. He said it made him look bad, and like we had problems. He accused me of not supporting him and not putting effort into his social life. The worst part happened last weekend. He invited me to a birthday party for his friend Mark at a bar. I'd had a long week at work and honestly didn't have the energy to go stand around feeling ignored again. I told him I was going to pass and wished Mark happy birthday. Ryan lost it. He said I was being selfish and that my absence would be noticeable. He actually said, "You embarrass me when you don't show up." Hearing that hurt more than I expected. We got into a big argument. I reminded him of all the times I did show up and how alone I felt while he acted like I wasn't there. He said that if I can't handle being around his friends, then maybe I'm not cut out to be with him. That comment made my stomach drop. It felt like a threat disguised as honesty. Since then, things have been tense. He's been cold and distant, like he's punishing me. I keep replaying everything in my head, wondering if I really am the problem. Am I supposed to just suck it up and be uncomfortable so he looks good? Is it normal for a partner to insist you attend events and then make you feel stupid for being there? I've talked to my sister Emily and my friend Hannah, and they both think Ryan is being unfair and disrespectful. They say a boyfriend should want you to feel comfortable and included, not ashamed. I love Ryan, or at least I love the version of him I thought I was with. But lately, I feel more like a prop he brings along when it suits him and hides when it doesn't. I don't want to be the girlfriend who causes drama or isolates him from his friends. At the same time, I don't think it's okay to be labeled embarrassing for having feelings. I'm stuck between wanting to stand up for myself and being afraid that doing so will end the relationship. I never imagined that something as simple as going to hang out would turn into this much conflict. I just want to know if I'm being unreasonable for not wanting to feel invisible, or if this is a sign that something bigger is wrong and I've been ignoring it for too long. Update: my boyfriend keeps dragging me to his hangouts, then ignores me, and now says I'm embarrassing him for not going. A lot has happened since I first posted, and I honestly didn't expect things to blow up the way they did. After reading through so many responses, I realized I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did. I tried to sit with that for a couple of days before talking to Ryan again because I didn't want to go into another conversation emotional and defensive. I wanted to be clear and calm and actually see if he was willing to hear me. I asked him if we could talk one evening after work. He seemed annoyed, but agreed. I told him I needed him to really listen this time and not interrupt me. I explained again how those hangouts made me feel, not in an accusing way, but in a factual way. I told him that being pressured to attend and then left alone hurt me and made me anxious. I said I wasn't asking him to cling to me all night, just to treat me like his partner and not an inconvenience. I also told him that calling me embarrassing crossed a line and damaged my trust in him. Ryan sat there quietly at first, and for a moment, I thought maybe it was finally getting through. Then he sighed and said he felt like he was walking on eggshells around me. He said his friends are starting to see me as antisocial, and that they joke about me never being around anymore. He claimed that when I do show up, I give off bad energy, and that reflects poorly on him. Hearing him frame it that way made something click in my head, and not in a good way. I asked him why my comfort mattered less than his image. He didn't really answer that. Instead, he said that relationships require compromise, and that I should be willing to step outside my comfort zone for him. I told him I had been doing that for over a year, and that it felt very one-sided. That's when he said something I can't stop thinking about. He told me that maybe he needs someone more confident and more fun to fit into his life. That sentence hurt more than I expected. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't dramatic. It was said calmly, like a conclusion he had already reached. I felt small sitting there. I asked him if he even liked me anymore, or if he just liked having a girlfriend to bring along when it suited him. He got defensive and said I was twisting his words, but he never actually reassured me. We ended the conversation unresolved. The next few days were awkward and distant. He barely texted me, and when he did it, was short and cold. That weekend he went out with his friends and didn't invite me at all. Part of me felt relieved, and another part felt deeply rejected. I stayed home and thought a lot about our relationship and how often lately I'd been feeling anxious instead of happy. On Sunday he came over and told me his friends had asked if everything was okay between us. He said it made him uncomfortable and that he didn't like being questioned. That's when I realized this wasn't about me at all. It was about how things looked to other people. I told him I didn't want to be in a relationship where my feelings were treated as an inconvenience or an embarrassment. I said I needed a partner who wanted me there, not one who resented me for existing the way I am. Ryan got quiet again and then said, maybe we should take a break. Not to work on things, just to get space. That felt like a soft breakup, even if he didn't use the word. I asked him directly if he wanted to keep trying, or if he was already halfway out the door. He didn't answer right away, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. I told him I didn't want a break. I wanted clarity and respect. I said if he couldn't give me that, then dragging things out would just hurt more. He looked surprised, like he didn't expect me to stand my ground. After a long pause, he said he didn't think he could give me what I wanted right now. So that was it. We broke up. It's been a mix of emotions since then. I've cried a lot, but I've also felt an unexpected sense of relief. I didn't realize how much of myself I was shrinking to avoid being labeled difficult or embarrassing. Talking to my sister Emily and my friend Hannah has helped a lot. They reminded me that the right person won't make me feel like I have to perform or disappear to be acceptable. I'm still sad, and it still hurts, because I loved him and I really thought we had a future. But looking back, I can see how often I was questioning myself instead of questioning his behavior. I don't know what comes next, and I'm definitely not ready to date again. For now, I'm just focusing on rebuilding my confidence and trusting my instincts again. I don't regret speaking up, even though it led to the end of the relationship. I think staying silent would have slowly erased me. If nothing else, this experience taught me that feeling invisible in a relationship is not something you should ever have to accept. Stories number 2. My family thinks I owe my brother half of everything I built. I never thought money would be the thing that finally broke my family, but here we are. I am in my mid-30s, and I grew up in a pretty average household in Ohio. My parents, Richard and Linda, worked hard, but we were never wealthy. I have an older brother named Jason who is 3 years older than me. Growing up, everyone always said Jason was the golden child. He was louder, more confident, and always needed help. I was the quiet one who stayed out of trouble and figured things out on my own. After high school, Jason bounced around. He tried community college, dropped out, joined a friend's startup that failed, then moved back home. My parents paid his rent more than once. They co-signed loans. They covered his credit card debt. I left for college on scholarships and student loans. I worked nights at a grocery store and later as a server. I paid my own way because I knew no one was going to rescue me. After college, I moved to Texas for a job in tech sales. It was brutal at first. I lived in a tiny apartment and drove a car with no AC. I failed a lot before I succeeded. Over time, things clicked. I switched companies, then industries. Eventually, I started my own consulting business. I worked insane hours. I missed weddings. I missed holidays. I reinvested everything back into the business. Over about 10 years, I did very well. I won't post exact numbers, but I am financially secure in a way my parents never were. Jason's life went the opposite direction. He married a woman named Crystal, who hated my parents and burned through money like it was water. They divorced after 3 years. He moved back in with my parents again. He worked warehouse jobs, then delivery, then nothing for long stretches. He always had a reason why it wasn't his fault. Bad bosses, bad economy, bad luck. The issue started last year when my parents came to visit me. They had never seen my house before. It is nice, but not flashy. During dinner, my mom kept making comments about how blessed I was and how proud she was. My dad was quiet. After a few glasses of wine, my mom said something that stuck with me. She said now that one of her children had made it, the whole family could finally breathe. A few weeks later, Jason called me. He was unusually calm. He said mom and dad told him how well I was doing. He said family should help family. He asked if I could help him get on his feet. I told him I was willing to help him find work, pay for a certification, or cover a few months of rent while he got stable. He paused and then said that wasn't what he meant. Jason said that since I had more than I needed, the fair thing would be to split what I had. He literally said half. He said if I loved him, I would want him to have the same security I did. I laughed at first because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He said our parents agreed. He said it wasn't fair that one brother lived comfortably while the other struggled. I told him no. Not angrily, just no. I said I worked for what I have, and I am not handing over half my life's work. He got quiet and then exploded. He accused me of thinking I was better than him. He said I forgot where I came from. He said money had made me selfish. He hung up on me. After that, my parents started calling. My mom cried on the phone. She said Jason was depressed and ashamed. She said I could change his life with one decision. My dad said less, but his disappointment was obvious. He said families are supposed to share burdens and blessings. He asked me what I needed all that money for anyway. Then extended family got involved. My Aunt Susan messaged me saying I was tearing the family apart. My cousin Mark sent me a long email about morality and responsibility. Even my childhood friend Brian asked me if something was wrong because Jason had posted vague stuff online about betrayal and greed. I tried to explain my side calmly. I told them I am not refusing to help Jason. I am refusing to bankroll him forever. Giving him half my assets would not fix his patterns. It would just delay the next crisis. I also pointed out that no one ever asked Jason to give me half of anything when I was struggling. That did not go over well. Jason showed up at my house unannounced a few months ago. He looked rough. He said he just wanted to talk. We sat at my kitchen table for hours. He told me he feels like a failure next to me. He said every family gathering people ask about my business and then look at him with pity. He said if I really cared, I would level the playing field. I told him I care, but I will not destroy my future to soothe his pride. He left angry. Now holidays are tense. My mom barely speaks to me. My dad is polite but distant. Jason refuses to be in the same room as me. I feel guilty sometimes. I also feel angry because it feels like my hard work has been rewritten as luck. I never expected praise, but I never expected to be told I owe my brother half my life either. I honestly do not know what to do anymore. I am standing my ground, but the cost is my relationship with my family. Some days, I wonder if peace is worth the price they are asking. Other days, I know that giving in would only create a different kind of resentment that would never go away. Stories number 3. My future mother-in-law wants to give my fiancé away at our wedding, and I said no. I never thought a wedding could turn into something that feels like a courtroom, but here I am, feeling like I have to defend myself just for wanting a normal ceremony. I am 28, I live in North Carolina, and I am engaged to the love of my life, Ethan. We have been together for 5 years, engaged for 1, and planning our wedding for almost 6 months now. Most of it has been joyful, stressful in a normal way, but joyful. Until his mother, Patricia, decided she had a vision for our wedding that included herself giving my fiancé away like he is a bride from a different century. Ethan is 30. He is kind, funny, and thoughtful in ways that still surprise me. He grew up mostly with his mom after his parents divorced when he was young. His dad, Michael, is still around, but not super involved. Patricia has always been intense. She is the kind of woman who talks over you while smiling and then says she just has strong opinions. I have learned how to navigate her, mostly by choosing my battles. When we first got engaged, Patricia cried, hugged me, told me she always wanted a daughter, and said she was so happy Ethan found someone acceptable. I pretended not to hear that last word. I wanted peace. I still do. The problem started when we began talking about the ceremony itself. We decided we wanted something simple. Outdoor venue. Close friends and family. I would walk down the aisle with my dad. Ethan would be waiting for me. We would exchange vows, and that would be that. No complicated traditions, just what felt right for us. One evening, we went to Patricia's house for dinner. She made a big deal about wedding talk night. She had notebooks, printed ideas, and color swatches. I appreciated the effort, even if it was a little much. Then she said, very casually, and of course, I'll be walking Ethan down the aisle and giving him away. I thought she was joking. I laughed a little and said, oh, he's not being given away. He'll just be waiting at the altar. Her face changed instantly. Not angry, but stiff. She said, no, that's not how it should be. He's my son. I raised him. I deserve that moment. Ethan looked uncomfortable. He didn't say anything at first, which already made me nervous. I said gently that I didn't think it made sense, since traditionally the groom isn't given away, and also we weren't really doing traditional roles anyway. She said traditions are important, and that she felt pushed aside. She started talking about how she sacrificed everything for Ethan, how she worked 2 jobs, how she stayed single for years, how she made him the man he is. It started feeling less like wedding planning and more like emotional blackmail. I told her I appreciated everything she did for him, but that the ceremony was about both of us and what we wanted. She said, "What you want is erasing me." That stung. I said no, but she didn't seem to hear me. She said she already told her friends she would be giving her son away, and they were so excited for her. She said she deserved to be honored. When we left that night, the car was silent. Finally, Ethan said he didn't want to hurt her, but he also didn't want our wedding to feel weird. I told him I needed him to be clear with her, not vague. This is our wedding, not a tribute ceremony for his mom. A few days later, Patricia called me directly. Not Ethan. Me. She said she felt like I was trying to control her son and erase her role. She said she knew girls like me who want to replace the mother. I told her that wasn't true, that I just wanted a ceremony that made sense to both of us. She said if she couldn't give him away, then maybe she shouldn't even come. I told her I would be sad if she didn't come, but I wasn't going to agree to something that made me uncomfortable just to keep the peace. That's when she said something I can't forget. She said, "You are stealing my son, and now you won't even let me have my moment." I cried after that call. Not dramatic crying, just quiet, heavy crying. I felt like no matter what I did, I was the villain in her story. Ethan did talk to her after that. He told her he loved her, but he didn't want to be given away. He said he was choosing me, not being handed over like property. She cried to him, accused me again, and told him he was breaking her heart. He told me all of this, clearly upset, but he still stood his ground. That made me love him even more, but it didn't erase the guilt I felt. Now his family is divided. His aunt, Rebecca, says I should just let Patricia do it to avoid drama. His cousin Tyler says it's weird and that his mom is making it about herself. My own mom, Karen, says this is exactly why you don't give in to emotional manipulation, because it never stops. The closer the wedding gets, the heavier this feels. I don't want to start my marriage by feeling like I betrayed myself. I also don't want to be the reason my fiancé loses his relationship with his mother. I keep wondering if I am being too stubborn. But every time I imagine standing there watching his mom give him away, it feels wrong in my chest. I didn't ask for this fight. I didn't create this idea. I just said no to something that didn't feel right to me. And now I'm being painted as controlling, selfish, and heartless. I love Ethan. I want to marry him because I want a life with him, not because I want to win some invisible competition with his mother. But I also don't think love means shrinking myself so someone else can feel powerful. I don't know if saying no makes me cruel or just honest. I don't know if standing my ground is strength or pride. All I know is that this wedding is supposed to be about 2 people choosing each other, not one person refusing to let go. And right now, I'm stuck between wanting peace and wanting to respect myself, and I don't know why those 2 things feel like they can't exist at the same time. Stories number 4. My mom hit a 6-figure settlement from my sister's car accident, and now everything feels poisoned. I am posting this because I do not know who I can talk to without blowing up my family, and I feel like I am carrying something heavy in my chest all the time. I am in my early 30s and I live in the Midwest, and my family has always been close in that messy, loud American way, where everyone is involved in everyone else's business, whether they admit it or not. My younger sister was in a serious car accident in early 2025, and that event changed a lot more than I think any of us realized at the time. My sister is named Emily, and she is 23. She was driving home from her shift at a coffee shop when a guy ran a red light and hit her on the driver's side. The car was totaled, and she ended up with a broken collarbone, a concussion, and a lot of soft tissue injuries that kept her out of work for months. She was living at home with our mom at the time because she was trying to save money after dropping out of college. I live about 2 hours away, so I was not there every day, but I came as often as I could. Our mom's name is Karen, and she is in her late 50s. She has always been the kind of parent who says she would do anything for her kids and genuinely believes that. She also has a strong need to be in control, and she frames it as being protective. When Emily was in the hospital, my mom took over everything. She talked to the doctors, she handled the insurance, she found a personal injury attorney, and she told Emily not to worry about anything except healing. At the time, that sounded like love. The attorney my mom hired was a local guy named Thomas who had commercials on daytime TV. Emily signed some papers that my mom said were standard so the lawyer could talk to insurance companies. Emily trusted her, and honestly, so did I. The other driver's insurance accepted fault pretty quickly, and then it turned into a long waiting game. Emily went to physical therapy, she dealt with headaches and anxiety about driving, and she struggled financially because disability payments barely covered anything. My mom paid some of her bills and constantly reminded her how lucky she was to have family. Fast forward to this summer. Emily finally started working again and moved in with a friend. She was still broke and frustrated, and she made an offhand comment during a family barbecue about how the settlement money never really came through the way she expected. I remember the exact moment because my mom froze for half a second too long before laughing and saying legal stuff takes time, and lawyers get most of it anyway. Something about that stuck with me. I have worked in finance for a decade, and I know roughly how these cases go. Even after fees, there should have been a decent payout. A few weeks later, Emily called me crying because she had received a collections notice for medical bills she thought were paid through the settlement. She said she called the law office, and they told her the case had been settled and funds dispersed months ago. That was the moment my stomach dropped. Emily was confused and thought maybe the office made a mistake. I told her to ask for a settlement breakdown in writing. When she did, they emailed her a document that showed the total settlement was just over $150,000. After attorney fees and medical liens, there was still over $90,000 left that was issued as a check to my mom. Emily thought that could not be right. She called my mom, and my mom told her not to worry and that the money was being used to cover things Emily did not understand, like household costs and future medical expenses. Emily called me right after and asked me if that sounded normal. I did not know what to say because it sounded very wrong. I asked my mom about it directly the next time I saw her. I tried to stay calm, and I told her I was worried Emily did not know about the settlement money. My mom immediately got defensive. She said Emily was young and irresponsible and would blow the money. She said she had put most of it into savings to protect Emily from herself. When I asked why Emily did not know about it, she said telling her would only stress her out. I pushed and asked whose name the account was in. My mom snapped and said I was accusing her of stealing from her own child. She said after everything she had done, this was how she was repaid. I left shaking and angry and also weirdly guilty because she sounded so hurt. I talked to Emily again and told her everything my mom said. Emily was quiet for a long time and then said she never agreed to my mom controlling the money. She said she would have made different decisions if she knew she had that kind of safety net. She could have moved out sooner or gone back to school or paid off her credit cards. Instead, she was constantly told there was no money and she was a burden. The more we talked, the more pieces fell into place. My mom had renovated her kitchen last year. She took a vacation to Florida with her boyfriend Mark. She paid off her own car loan. Emily had assumed our mom was finally comfortable financially. Now we were both wondering if that comfort came from Emily's settlement. I did some quiet digging. I looked up public records and found that my mom had opened a new savings account shortly after the settlement date. Emily called the attorney again and confirmed the check was made out to my mom as Emily's guardian because Emily was listed as incapacitated at the time due to the concussion. Emily was legally an adult, but the paperwork gave my mom temporary authority. Now Emily is asking me what she should do. She is scared of confronting our mom because she still depends on her emotionally and partly financially. She is also scared of legal action because that feels like crossing a line you cannot uncross. I am angry in a way I have never been angry before. I keep replaying every time my mom told Emily there was no money and every time Emily skipped things because she did not want to ask. I am stuck because if I push this, I could blow up my family. My dad passed away years ago, so it is really just us. If I stay quiet, I feel like I am complicit. My mom keeps texting me like nothing is wrong and asking when I am coming to visit. I do not know how to look at her without seeing this secret. I also do not know what the legal reality is. I am not a lawyer. I do not know if what my mom did is technically illegal or just morally wrong. I do know that Emily never saw a dime of that money and had no idea it existed. I keep thinking about how that money was supposed to help her rebuild her life after a trauma, and instead it became another trauma layered on top. I am writing this because I need perspective from people who are not emotionally tied to this. I need to know if I am overreacting or if this is as serious as it feels. I need to know what Emily's options might be and whether confronting my mom is a terrible idea or the only one. I feel like once this comes into the open, there is no going back, and I am terrified of what that means for all of us. Update. My mom hid a 6-figure settlement from my sister's car accident, and now everything feels poisoned. I did not plan to write an update this soon, but things moved faster than I expected, and I feel like I am barely keeping up. After I posted the original story, I sat with the advice for a couple of days, and it became impossible to pretend nothing was happening. Emily came over to my place one night after work, and she looked exhausted in a way that was not just physical. She told me she had barely slept because every memory of the past year felt different now, like it had been rewritten with this new information. She said she kept replaying moments where our mom told her they could not afford something and moments where she felt guilty for existing in the house. She said the hardest part was realizing that her own pain and accident might have been treated like a financial opportunity. Hearing her say that out loud made something snap in me, and I told her I would support whatever she decided to do, even if it meant burning bridges. The next day, Emily asked the attorney Thomas for a full copy of the file, including the guardianship paperwork. He sent it over, and we went through it line by line together. The temporary authority my mom had was limited, and it clearly stated the funds were to be held for Emily's benefit. There was nothing about using the money for unrelated household renovations or vacations. Seeing that in writing gave Emily a strange calm. She said it stopped feeling like a family disagreement and started feeling like something real and concrete. Emily decided she wanted to confront our mom first before doing anything legal. She asked me to be there because she was afraid she would freeze or be talked over. We drove to my mom's house together, and my heart was pounding the entire time. My mom greeted us like it was a normal visit and offered coffee. Emily said we needed to talk, and my mom's face changed immediately. Emily told her she knew the amount of the settlement and that she knew the money was in an account under my mom's control. She asked directly where the money was and how much was left. My mom started crying almost instantly. She said she did everything for Emily and that she sacrificed so much time and energy during her recovery. She said she deserved some compensation and that Emily did not understand how expensive it was to keep a household running. Emily stayed surprisingly calm. She said she was grateful for the care, but that did not give my mom the right to take her money or lie about it. She said she felt betrayed and infantilized. I watched my mom cycle through anger, guilt, and denial in the span of minutes. She accused me of poisoning Emily against her. She said families do not involve lawyers, and that if Emily took this further, she would regret it. That was the moment I realized there was no clean resolution here. My mom refused to give a clear number for how much money remained. She said some of it was gone, but it was all justified in her mind. Emily asked to see bank statements, and my mom said no and told us to leave. We left and sat in the car in silence for a long time. Emily eventually said she felt weirdly relieved because at least she knew she was not imagining things. A few days later, she consulted a different attorney named Rachel, who specializes in fiduciary abuse. Rachel was very direct. She said based on what Emily described, there was a strong case and that my mom's behavior was not just unethical, but likely illegal. Emily struggled with that. She cried and said she never wanted to be the person who sued her own mother. Rachel told her that this was not about punishment, but about accountability and recovering what was taken. Emily asked for time to think. In the middle of all this, my mom started texting me constantly. She alternated between apologizing and blaming me. She said I was tearing the family apart and that Emily would never forgive herself if she went through with this. She also hinted that if legal action happened, she would cut us both off completely. Emily finally made a decision after she received another medical bill that went to collections. She said she was tired of living with consequences while someone else lived comfortably. She authorized Rachel to send a formal demand letter asking for an accounting of the funds and the return of the remaining balance. When my mom received that letter, she called me screaming. She said I had chosen sides and that I was dead to her if this continued. I told her calmly that I did not choose sides, she did. She hung up on me and blocked my number. A week later, Rachel informed Emily that my mom's lawyer had responded and admitted that a significant portion of the funds had been used for non-approved expenses. They offered a partial repayment in exchange for dropping further claims. Emily did not accept it yet. She said she needed to think about what justice looked like for her. Right now, we are in this strange limbo. Emily is stronger than I have ever seen her, but also deeply grieving the relationship she thought she had with our mom. I am grieving too in my own way. I still do not know how this will end or whether our family will ever look the same again. What I do know is that the truth is out now and it cannot be shoved back into the dark. Whatever happens next will be built on honesty, whether my mom likes it or not. Stories number 5. My wife is transitioning, and I do not know how to survive this without losing myself. I never thought I would be writing something like this, but I am at a point where I cannot hold it in anymore, and I have nowhere else to put these thoughts. I am a 34-year-old man living in Ohio, and I have been married to my wife for 9 years. We met in college through a mutual friend named Eric, and back then, she went by Daniel. I am going to call her Emily here because that is the name she chose, and I want to respect that even though it hurts to type. When we met, I thought I had found my person. Daniel was kind, thoughtful, quiet in a way that made me feel safe. We built a life together the slow, boring, beautiful way. We rented a tiny apartment. We argued about money. We adopted a dog named Cooper. We got married in my parents' backyard with my sister Lauren crying through the whole ceremony. I believed in us completely. I believed I knew who my partner was. 2 years ago, things started to feel off. Emily was distant but not angry, more withdrawn than usual. She stopped wanting to be touched. She would stay up late on her laptop and close it when I walked into the room. I assumed depression or work stress. She worked with a guy named Marcus who was openly trans, and I remember thinking maybe that was relevant, but I pushed the thought away because I did not want to jump to conclusions. One night after dinner, she asked me to sit down. Her hands were shaking so badly, I thought she was going to tell me she was sick. She cried before she even spoke. She told me she was transgender. She said she had always felt this way and had buried it for decades. She said she could not do it anymore. She said she wanted to transition. I remember nodding and saying okay, even though my chest felt like it was caving in. I told her I loved her. I told her I would support her. I meant it in that moment. I truly did. I thought love would be enough. I thought I could adapt. The problem is that loving someone does not magically change who you are. I am straight. I have always been straight. I married a man. I am now married to a woman. That sentence alone makes my brain short circuit. I am expected to just flip a switch and be fine with it. Emily dove into transition fast. New clothes, new name. Hormones within months. She wanted me to practice using her new pronouns constantly and would correct me sharply if I messed up. I understand why, but every correction felt like a reminder that the person I married was disappearing. I was grieving, and no one seemed to care. When I tried to talk to her about how scared I was, she told me I was making it about myself. When I said I did not know if I could stay married to a woman, she cried and asked how I could abandon her during the hardest time of her life. I felt like a monster. I still do. Our friends picked sides quickly. Eric told me I needed to educate myself. Lauren told me I was allowed to have feelings, but to be careful who I shared them with. Emily's friend Jenna stopped talking to me completely and unfriended me everywhere. I became the villain in a story I never asked to be in. Intimacy is gone. I cannot force attraction. I feel sick with guilt even typing that. I flinch when she touches me and then hate myself for flinching. She notices everything. She asked me if I was disgusted by her. I said no, but it felt like a lie wrapped around a truth I did not know how to explain. We tried couples therapy with a woman named Susan. Every session turned into me being told I needed to process faster and be more supportive. When I talked about grief, Susan reframed it as resistance. When I talked about orientation, it became something I needed to challenge. I left sessions feeling smaller and more broken than before. I started having panic attacks in my car before coming home from work. I would sit in the parking lot, staring at the steering wheel. I felt like my home was no longer mine. The person sleeping next to me felt like a stranger wearing my wife's face. I hated myself for thinking that. I cannot talk about this openly without being labeled transphobic. I am not trying to invalidate her identity. I am trying to survive. I am trying to understand how I am supposed to erase my own needs without disappearing entirely. The legal side terrifies me too. We own a house together. We have joint accounts. We planned for kids. We talked about names. Now, everything is uncertain. When I mentioned separation once during a fight, Emily said she had sacrificed everything to be honest, and that if I left, I would be destroying her life. That sentence plays on repeat in my head. I feel trapped between two impossible choices. Stay and slowly lose myself while pretending everything is fine. Leave and become the person who abandoned his transitioning spouse. There is no option where I come out clean. Some nights I sleep on the couch with Cooper curled against my chest, and I cry so quietly, I give myself headaches. I miss my wife. I miss the future I thought we were building. I miss feeling like a good person. If anyone has been through something like this, I do not even know what advice would look like. I just needed to say this somewhere without being told that my pain is wrong. I can support her right to be herself and still be shattered by what it means for my life. I wish more people understood that those two things can exist at the same time. Update: my wife is transitioning, and I do not know how to survive this without losing myself. I did not expect the amount of messages I received after posting. I read every single one, even the harsh ones, and I want to explain what has happened since then, because things have shifted in ways I did not anticipate. I am still shaken and still hurting, but I am clearer than I was when I first wrote. A few days after I posted, Emily found the post. She recognized details about Cooper and our wedding and confronted me late at night. I panicked and felt exposed and ashamed. I expected yelling or accusations. Instead, she sat on the edge of the bed and cried quietly. She said reading my words was like being punched in the stomach, but also like finally hearing the truth. That conversation was the first honest one we have had in a long time. I told her I was grieving the life I thought we were building, and that I felt erased when my orientation was treated like something to fix. I told her I was not trying to punish her or control her transition. I told her I was drowning. She admitted she had been terrified of losing me and had gone into survival mode. She said she felt like if she slowed down or acknowledged my pain, it would mean she had to stop being herself. She apologized for the pressure and for using guilt during arguments. That does not erase the damage, but it mattered. We agreed to pause couples therapy with Susan. That alone lifted a weight off my chest. I started seeing my own therapist, named Michael, who does not treat me like a problem to correct. For the first time, I said out loud that I might not be able to stay married, and he did not react like I had confessed a crime. The hardest moment came when I told Emily directly that I am not attracted to women and that no amount of love will change that. I expected her to break down. She went very still. Then she said she had suspected as much and had been hoping time would fix it. Hearing that hurt both of us. We talked about separation in practical terms for the first time, not as a threat, not as an accusation, just as a possibility. We discussed the house, we discussed money, we discussed Cooper, we cried a lot. At the end of that conversation, she asked me something that surprised me. She asked if I would be willing to stay legally married for a while, but live separately, so we could both adjust without making irreversible decisions right away. We are currently doing that. I moved into a small apartment across town. It smells like cardboard and new paint. It is lonely, but it is quiet. I sleep better. Cooper stays with me most nights and goes back to Emily on weekends. We text daily, sometimes about logistics, sometimes about feelings, sometimes about nothing important at all. The guilt is still there, but it is different now. It is not crushing in the same way. I am beginning to understand that supporting someone does not mean sacrificing your entire identity. I can respect Emily and still acknowledge that our marriage as it was cannot exist anymore. Some friends have come back around. Eric apologized after reading the post. He said he did not realize how much I was holding in. Lauren has been my anchor. She reminds me that endings are not the same as failures. I do not know what the final outcome will be. Divorce is still on the table. So is a redefined relationship that looks nothing like what we planned. What I do know is that I am no longer pretending I am fine when I am not. I am learning that compassion has to go both ways, or it turns into something toxic. If you are in a similar place, I want to say this clearly. You are allowed to grieve even when someone else is becoming more themselves. Those truths can exist together. I am still scared, but I am not as lost as I was when I first wrote. That feels like progress even if it is small. Stories number 6. My boyfriend told me to submit and clean up after him, and I walked out. I never thought I would be writing something like this, but the last few weeks have completely shaken my sense of what I should tolerate in a relationship. I'm a 27F, and my now ex-boyfriend Caleb is 30M. We were together for almost 3 years and lived together for a little over 1. From the outside, our relationship probably looked normal. We both worked full-time, split bills, and talked about eventually getting married. What people didn't see was how slowly the dynamic between us changed until one sentence finally snapped something in me. When Caleb and I first started dating, he was charming and confident in a way that felt grounding. I liked that he seemed sure of himself. He used to say he wanted a partnership and that we were a team. When we moved in together in Denver, we agreed to split chores evenly. At first, we actually did. I cooked, he cleaned. He handled trash, I did laundry. It wasn't perfect, but it felt fair. Over time, things shifted in small ways that were easy to excuse. Caleb would leave his dishes in the sink and say he'd get to them later. Later turned into the next day and then into me doing them because I needed the counter space. He'd leave clothes on the floor and joke that I was better at organizing anyway. When I brought it up, he'd laugh and say I was making a big deal out of nothing. The comments started changing too. He began listening to a lot of podcasts and watching content about traditional relationships and masculinity. At first, it was just background noise. Then he started repeating phrases. He'd say things like, men are natural leaders, or women bring peace to the home. I didn't agree, but I didn't argue much either. I thought it was just talk. Then the expectations became more obvious. Caleb stopped cooking altogether. If I didn't make dinner, he'd ask what we were eating like it was my responsibility by default. If the apartment was messy, he'd say it stressed him out, but wouldn't lift a finger to help. When I asked him to take out the trash or wipe the counters, he'd say he was tired from work and that I was better at that stuff. The first real argument happened when I came home late from work one night. I work in marketing, and we were in the middle of a big campaign. I walked into the apartment, and there were empty takeout containers on the coffee table, dishes piled in the sink, and crumbs all over the couch. Caleb was playing video games. I asked him why he didn't clean up after himself. He paused the game, looked at me, and said, "You're the one who cares about this stuff, so why are you mad?" I told him I cared because we both lived there. He rolled his eyes and said he thought once we lived together, I'd naturally take on more of the home stuff. That word naturally bothered me. I asked what he meant. He said his mom always handled the house and his dad worked, and that dynamic made sense to him. I reminded him that we both work full-time and make similar money. He said that didn't change biology. After that conversation, things fell off. He started criticizing how I did things. If dinner was late, he'd comment. If the bathroom wasn't spotless, he'd sigh loudly. He once told me I should take pride in keeping a clean home for my man. I remember laughing awkwardly because I couldn't believe he was serious. The breaking point came last month. We had friends over, including my coworker Lauren and his friend Nick. I spent most of the day cleaning and cooking because Caleb said he wanted the place to look good. During the night, he joked in front of everyone that I was finally learning how to be domesticated. I felt my face burn, but I didn't want to cause a scene. Lauren gave me a look that said everything. After everyone left, I confronted him. I told him that comment embarrassed me and made me feel disrespected. That's when he said the sentence I can't forget. He told me that a relationship works best when the woman knows how to submit and take care of her man. He said I should focus on cleaning up after him and making his life easier instead of challenging him all the time. I stared at him in silence for a moment. I asked him if he truly believed that. He said yes, and that if I couldn't accept my role, then maybe I wasn't ready for a serious relationship. He told me modern women are too combative and that I needed to learn my place if we were going to last. Something inside me just went still. I realized that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a phase. This was who he was and what he expected from me. I thought about the future he was describing and felt a tightness in my chest. I imagined years of shrinking myself, cleaning up after a grown man who saw me as inferior, and teaching potential children that this was normal. I told him I wasn't going to submit to anyone and that I wasn't his maid or his mother. He laughed and said I was being dramatic and emotional. That laugh did it. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, and started packing clothes. He followed me asking what I was doing and telling me to calm down. I told him I was leaving. He got angry then. He said I was overreacting and throwing away a good relationship over one comment. He accused me of being influenced by my friends and social media. When I kept packing, he said I'd regret it and that no man would want a woman who couldn't be cooperative. I left that night and went to my sister Megan's apartment. I cried the entire drive. The next day, Caleb texted me like nothing happened. He asked when I was coming home and what we were doing for dinner. When I told him I needed space, he said I was punishing him for being honest. Over the next week, he sent a mix of messages. Some were apologetic, but vague. Others doubled down on his beliefs. He said he just wanted a peaceful home and that I was making things harder than they needed to be. At no point did he actually say he was wrong or that he'd change. Talking to Megan and my friend Ashley helped me see things more clearly. They pointed out how gradual the shift had been and how he was testing boundaries. They said leaving wasn't dramatic, it was self-respect. Hearing that made me feel less crazy. I officially moved out a few days ago and picked up the rest of my things while he was at work. It hurt walking through that apartment knowing what I thought we were building there. At the same time, I felt lighter with every box I carried out. Now I'm sitting here wondering if I did the right thing or if I walked away too quickly. Part of me still hears his voice telling me I'm difficult and unrealistic. Another part of me knows that staying would have meant losing myself. I didn't leave because I can't clean or compromise. I left because I refused to be reduced to a role I never agreed to. I don't know how he's telling the story to other people. I'm sure he's framing it like I abandoned him over nothing. All I know is that the idea of going back and pretending that sentence never happened makes my stomach turn. I want a partner who sees me as an equal, not someone who expects obedience and silence. I just need to know if walking away when he showed me exactly who he was makes me the jerk, or if it's the first truly adult decision I've made in a long time. Stories number 7. My mom keeps pushing a reconciliation meeting with my stepdad, and I keep refusing. I have been sitting on this for a while because every time I think about it, my stomach tightens. I am in my late 20s, and I grew up in a pretty chaotic household. My biological father, Daniel, left when I was young. My mom, Karen, married my stepdad, Thomas, when I was 9. On paper, it probably looked like a fresh start. In reality, it was the beginning of years of tension that never really stopped. Thomas was never physically abusive, and I want to be clear about that, but he was controlling in ways that are hard to explain to people who did not live with it. Everything had to be his way. How loud the TV was, how long showers lasted, what food was allowed in the house. If I disagreed, he would lecture me for hours. Not yelling, just cold logical speeches about respect and gratitude that made me feel small. My mom always told me to keep the peace. She said he meant well. She said I was sensitive. As a teenager, I learned to disappear. I stayed in my room. I worked part-time jobs to avoid being home. When I turned 18, I moved out as soon as I could. I went to college in another state and barely came back except for holidays. Every visit felt like walking on glass. Thomas would comment on my clothes, my major, my friends. He loved reminding me that he paid some of the bills when I was growing up. Like that meant I owed him loyalty forever. The final blow happened when I was 22. I was visiting for Thanksgiving. During dinner, Thomas made a joke about how I would probably drop out and come crawling back home. Everyone laughed awkwardly. Something in me snapped. I told him that he had no right to talk about me like that. He smirked and said I should learn to take a joke. My mom told me to calm down. I left that night and drove back to my apartment in tears. After that, I went very low contact with Thomas and limited contact with my mom. Over the years, my mom and I tried to maintain some kind of relationship. We talked on the phone. We met for lunch sometimes without Thomas. I set clear boundaries. I told her I did not want to be around him. She said she understood, but every few months she would bring up reconciliation. She would say he misses me. She would say he does not understand why I hate him. She would say family is important. Last year, Thomas had a health scare, nothing life-threatening but serious enough to shake my mom. Since then, she has been relentless. She keeps asking for a reconciliation meeting. She wants all 3 of us to sit down and talk things out. She says life is too short to hold grudges. She says she wants peace before something bad happens. Every time she asks, I say no. I try to be calm. I say I am not ready. I say I do not feel safe emotionally around him. She pushes back. She says I am being dramatic. She says I am punishing her. She says Thomas has changed. When I ask how, she says he is older and quieter now. That is it. A few weeks ago, she crossed a line. She invited me to lunch and did not tell me Thomas would be there. When I walked in and saw him sitting at the table, my heart dropped. I froze. My mom smiled like this was a pleasant surprise. Thomas said hello like nothing had ever happened. I turned around and left. I cried in my car for half an hour. After that, my mom blew up my phone. She said I embarrassed her. She said I hurt Thomas deeply. She said I am tearing the family apart by refusing to move on. She said other families deal with worse and still forgive. I told her she lied to me and broke my trust. She said sometimes people need a push to heal. Now, relatives are involved. My uncle Robert called me and said my mom is heartbroken. My cousin Emily messaged me saying I will regret this when it is too late. Even my mom's friend Linda told me I should at least hear Thomas out. No one seems to care about how I feel. They only care about the idea of a happy family. The thing is, I am not angry all the time anymore. Distance helped. Therapy helped. I built a life where I feel stable and respected. The thought of sitting across from Thomas while he explains why my feelings are wrong makes my chest feel tight. I do not want an apology that comes only because my mom demanded it. I do not want to reopen wounds just so everyone else can feel comfortable. My mom says she feels stuck in the middle. I feel like I have been in the middle my entire life. I was the kid expected to adapt, to forgive, to be understanding. I am tired. I love my mom, but every time she pushes this meeting, it feels like she is choosing his comfort over my boundaries. I keep wondering if I am being stubborn or cruel. Part of me worries that maybe I am overreacting. Another part of me knows that my peace matters too. I am not asking her to leave her husband. I am just asking her to respect my no. Right now, that no seems to be the one thing she refuses to accept. Update: my mom keeps pushing a reconciliation meeting with my stepdad, and I keep refusing. A lot has happened since I last wrote, and I honestly did not expect things to escalate the way they did. After I left the restaurant and ignored my mom's calls for a few days, I finally picked up because I did not want to completely blow up our relationship. The call did not go the way I hoped. My mom started by crying and saying she did not raise me to be so cold. She said Thomas was deeply hurt and confused and could not sleep because he felt like a monster. That alone told me this conversation was already centered on him. I told her clearly that ambushing me was not okay, and that it confirmed exactly why I do not feel safe meeting with him. She said she only did it because she knew I would say no otherwise. I told her that saying no is my right. She said I am an adult now and should be able to handle an uncomfortable conversation. I told her I have handled uncomfortable conversations my whole childhood and that I am done doing it for other people's comfort. Things really blew up when I told her I am taking a break from seeing her in person if she keeps pushing this. I did not threaten no contact, but I said I need space. She went quiet and then said she feels like she is losing her child because of a mistake her husband made years ago. I told her it was not one mistake. It was years of behavior she minimized and excused. She said she did her best and I should be grateful. That hurt more than I expected. A few days later, Thomas emailed me. It was a long email. He said he was sorry if he ever made me feel uncomfortable. He said he grew up in a strict household and thought discipline was love. He said he never meant to hurt me and that he hopes we can clear the air like adults. The part that stood out was when he said he feels judged for mistakes he cannot change. There was no acknowledgement of specific things he did, no recognition of how those things affected me. It felt more like he wanted absolution than understanding. I showed the email to my therapist. She pointed out something I already felt but could not name. The apology was conditional and centered on his feelings. That helped me feel less crazy. I replied politely and briefly. I thanked him for reaching out and said I am not ready for a meeting and that I need my boundary respected. I did not get a reply. My mom found out about the email and called me furious. She said I crushed him by refusing after he tried to apologize. She said I am impossible to please. I told her an apology does not erase the need for consent. I told her forcing reconciliation only makes things worse. She said she feels like she has to choose between her husband and her child. I told her I am not making her choose. I am choosing myself. Since then, I have pulled back more. I stopped answering daily calls. I told my Uncle Robert and Cousin Emily that I appreciate their concern, but this is not up for debate. Some of them backed off. Some of them think I am selfish. I am learning to live with that. The hardest part is grieving the mom I wish I had. I keep realizing that she wants peace at any cost, even if that cost is my emotional safety. I still love her, but I am starting to accept that loving her does not mean sacrificing myself. For now, there is no reconciliation meeting. There is just distance, therapy, and me learning that no is a complete sentence, even when family does not want to hear it. Stories number 8. My boyfriend hid a camera in our apartment, and I don't know how to move forward. I am 25, I live in Oregon, and until a few days ago, I thought I had a normal life. I work in graphic design, I pay my half of the rent, I have a cat, and I live with my boyfriend Lucas, who is 28. We have been together for almost 3 years. We moved in together about a year ago. I thought I knew him. Now I don't know anything for sure. The apartment is small but nice. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, open kitchen and living room. We split everything. He works in it. He is quiet. A little awkward socially, but always kind to me. At least I thought he was kind. We didn't fight much. If we did, it was about small things like dishes or him forgetting to text when he was going to be late. Last weekend, something small started this whole nightmare. I was cleaning the living room because my friend Olivia was coming over. She hadn't been to our place in a while. I was wiping shelves and moving things around when I noticed a tiny black dot in the corner near the ceiling above our TV. It didn't belong there. It wasn't a nail or a screw. It looked like a little eye staring at me. I stood on a chair to look closer. It was a tiny camera lens. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I felt dizzy. I told myself there had to be some explanation. Maybe it was part of the building. Maybe it was broken electronics. But deep down, I knew it wasn't normal. I didn't touch it. I just stood there shaking. When Olivia arrived, I didn't even say hello properly. I pulled her into the kitchen and whispered what I saw. She went pale and told me not to freak out yet, but to check it carefully. We used her phone flashlight. It was definitely a camera. It was wired into the wall in a way that looked intentional. I felt sick. I started thinking about all the times I changed clothes in the living room. All the times I cried on the couch. All the times I thought I was alone. I felt violated in a way I didn't know how to explain. Lucas was at work. I didn't want to confront him without thinking. Olivia said I should leave for the night. She offered her couch. I packed a bag with shaking hands. I didn't even go into the living room again. I avoided looking at that corner. That night at Olivia's place, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying moments from the past year. Little things that felt weird at the time, but I ignored. Lucas always wanted to know where I was. Not in a jealous way, just in a constant way. He liked knowing my schedule. He got uncomfortable if I changed plans last minute. I thought he was just anxious. The next morning, I called my brother Andrew. He lives 2 hours away. I told him everything. He told me not to go back alone and not to confront Lucas without support. He said this was serious and possibly illegal. We decided I would go back with Andrew that afternoon. Lucas was supposed to be at work until 6. When we got there, my stomach dropped. The camera was gone. I felt like I was going to pass out. Someone had removed it. I didn't know if it was Lucas or someone else. Andrew checked the wall and said the wiring had been pulled out and covered with a small patch that was badly done. It looked rushed. I called Lucas. I tried to sound normal. I asked him if he came home during his lunch break. He hesitated just a second before saying no. That second told me everything. I asked him directly if he knew anything about a camera in our living room. There was silence. Then he said he didn't know what I was talking about. I told him I saw it. I told him I had photos. I didn't actually, but he didn't know that. He started crying. Real crying. He said he was scared I would leave him. He said he had issues with abandonment. He said he just wanted to feel close to me even when I wasn't home. He said he never planned to hurt me. I felt numb. I told him not to come home and that I needed space. He begged me not to tell anyone. He said he would do anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever I wanted. Andrew wanted to call the police immediately. I wasn't ready. I felt torn between anger, fear, and this weird sadness for the man I thought I knew. I asked Lucas if he saved any footage. He said no. I don't know if I believe him. I stayed with Andrew that night. I cried in a way I didn't know I could cry. Not loud, just empty, like something inside me had broken. The next day, I went back to the apartment while Lucas was at a friend's place. I packed more clothes, my laptop, important papers, and my cat. Every corner of that apartment felt wrong now, like it was watching me, even though I knew the camera was gone. I contacted our landlord, Mr. Collins. I didn't tell him everything, just that there had been a serious privacy issue and I needed to leave. He said we both signed the lease and I couldn't just disappear without consequences. I told him I would explain more if needed. I finally called the police and made a report. The officer, a woman named Officer Ramirez, was calm and kind. She said hidden cameras without consent are illegal. She said what Lucas did was serious. She asked if I wanted to press charges. I told her I needed time. Lucas has been texting nonstop, apologizing, crying, promising, saying he loves me, saying he made a mistake. I don't reply. Every time my phone buzzes, my chest tightens. Some people I've told say I should forgive him if he gets help. Some say I should never speak to him again. I don't know who I am right now. I don't know what kind of woman I am in this situation. I feel stupid for not noticing sooner. I feel angry at myself for trusting so easily. I feel scared because someone I slept next to every night turned out to be someone who watched me without my consent. I am trying to figure out what moving forward even means. Does it mean cutting him off forever? Does it mean going to court? Does it mean therapy for me? Does it mean learning how to trust again? Right now, I am sleeping in a spare room at Andrew's place. My cat curls up next to me like nothing happened. I envy how simple his world is. I don't know if I want justice or closure or just peace. I only know that my old life is gone. The girl who felt safe in her own home is gone. And I don't know yet who I am going to be after this. Update. My boyfriend hid a camera in our apartment and I don't know how to move forward. It has been a few weeks since everything exploded and my life feels like it belongs to someone else now. I am still staying with my brother Andrew and I don't think I could have survived this without him. He checks on me constantly, makes sure I eat, and sits with me when my thoughts get too loud. Some days I feel almost normal. Other days I can barely get out of bed. After I made the police report, Officer Ramirez called me back for a follow-up. They questioned Lucas. He admitted to installing the camera, but claimed he never shared the footage and that he deleted everything. There is no real way to prove that, and that fact eats at me. They took his laptop and phone to be checked, which made him furious. He sent me long messages blaming me for ruining his life. That was the moment something in me finally shut off emotionally. I blocked him after that, completely. Phone, email, social media, everything. I realized that every message from him made me feel smaller, more confused, and more unsafe. Blocking him felt like cutting off a bleeding limb. Painful, but necessary to survive. The lease situation got complicated. The landlord, Mr. Collins, wanted both of us to pay the penalty if we broke the lease early. I ended up having to tell him the truth. Not every detail, but enough. He went quiet and said he needed to speak to his lawyer. A few days later, he agreed to let me out of the lease without penalty as long as I moved out completely. Lucas is now responsible for the place on his own. I cried from relief when I heard that. I went back one last time with Andrew to get the rest of my things. Walking into that apartment felt like walking into a crime scene. Even though the camera was gone, I kept looking at corners, vents, shelves, anything that could hide something. I felt stupid for ever feeling safe there. I grabbed my clothes, my books, little things that used to feel like home. Now they just feel like objects that survived something ugly. Lucas wasn't there. Part of me was glad. Part of me wanted to scream at him. I don't think either would have helped. I started therapy last week. My therapist's name is Dr. Myers. She told me that what I experienced is a deep violation of trust and privacy, and that it makes sense that my nervous system is in survival mode. She said healing won't be fast or neat. Some days will feel okay, some days will feel unbearable. That honesty helps more than fake comfort ever could. I still flinch when I notice small black dots or reflections in windows. I still change clothes in the bathroom with the door locked, even though I know there is no camera here. My brain doesn't care about logic right now. It just wants to feel safe again. Friends have reacted in different ways. Olivia has been amazing. She checks in every day and never pushes me to be over it. My coworker Jenna told me I should just move on and that guys do weird things sometimes. I don't talk to her anymore. I don't have the energy to explain why that kind of thinking is dangerous. As for the legal side, I decided to move forward with charges. Not because I want revenge, but because I don't want him to do this to someone else. That decision took days of crying, doubting, and shaking. It still scares me. But staying silent scared me more. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know when I'll feel safe in my own space again. I don't know when I'll trust someone enough to love them the way I love Lucas. But I do know this. What he did was not love. Love doesn't watch you without consent. Love doesn't lie to your face while stealing your privacy. Some nights I still miss the version of him I thought I knew. Then I remind myself that version wasn't real, or at least it wasn't complete. Stories number 9. My relationship ended over a glass of water, and I still can't believe that's what finally broke it. I never thought I would be the kind of person posting something like this, but here I am, because I genuinely do not know if I completely lost my mind or if this was a long time coming and the glass of water was just the spark. I am 31 and I live on the East Coast, and until about 2 weeks ago, I thought I was in a stable adult relationship that had its issues, but nothing that screamed imminent breakup. My now ex-girlfriend's name is Lauren, and she is 29. We were together for a little over 3 years, and living together for almost 2. On paper, everything looked fine. We both worked full-time, split rent, had a shared group of friends, and talked loosely about getting married someday. The reality was more complicated, and I think that is why this stupid glass of water matters more than it sounds. Lauren has always been very particular about things being done her way. Not in an explosive yelling way, but in a quiet, constant correcting way. She would reload the dishwasher after I loaded it. She would reorganize the fridge after I went grocery shopping. She would remind me that the way I folded towels was wrong and that it created wrinkles. Anytime I brought this up, she would smile and say she was just being efficient or that I was being sensitive. Over time, I started to feel like a guest in my own apartment. I would ask before doing things just to avoid the commentary. If I cooked, she would hover and suggest changes. If I cleaned, she would redo it later. If I pointed this out, she would say she never asked me to do those things and that she could just do them herself. It turned into this quiet resentment loop that I did not know how to escape. The glass of water incident happened on a random Tuesday night. I had a long day at work and came home exhausted. Lauren was on the couch, scrolling on her phone. I asked her if she wanted anything from the kitchen, and she said no. I grabbed myself a glass of water and sat down next to her. After a minute, she looked at my glass and said I should use a coaster because the table was new. I said okay and put a coaster under it. Then she said I should not fill the glass all the way to the top because it increases the chance of spilling. I laughed a little and said I was pretty confident in my ability to drink water. She did not laugh back. She said she was just trying to prevent accidents. I took a sip, and she told me not to drink so close to the edge of the couch because if I spilled it, would soak the cushions. Something in me snapped, but instead of yelling, I calmly asked her if she realized she was monitoring how I drank water. She got defensive immediately. She said I was twisting her words and that she was only trying to help. I said it did not feel like help and that it felt like control. She rolled her eyes and said, "Here we go again." That phrase hit me harder than anything else. I told her this was not just about the water, I told her I felt constantly criticized and corrected, and that I felt like I could not relax around her. She said she felt like she had to manage everything, because if she did not, things would fall apart. I asked her what exactly would fall apart if I spilled some water, and she said I was being dramatic. That was the moment I realized she genuinely did not see me as an equal adult. I felt small and stupid sitting there, holding a glass of water like it was evidence in a trial. I put the glass down and told her I could not do this anymore. She laughed at first and asked if I was seriously breaking up with her over water. I said no, I was breaking up with her because I felt micromanaged and disrespected and exhausted. She told me I was overreacting and that every couple has quirks. She said if I left over something this small, I would regret it. I went to the bedroom and packed a bag. She followed me and kept telling me to calm down. She said I was acting emotional and impulsive. She said I always do this thing where I shut down instead of working through issues. I told her I had been working through issues quietly for years. When I walked out, she did not stop me. The next day, she texted me saying she could not believe I threw away our relationship over something so trivial. She told our friends the same story, and now I am getting messages asking if I really dumped her over a glass of water. I am staying with my brother Michael for now, and he says it sounds like death by 1,000 cuts. Part of me agrees, and part of me wonders if I should have tried harder or explained myself better. I keep replaying that moment and asking myself if I was unfair. I miss the good parts of Lauren. I miss our routines and inside jokes and the way she used to rub my back when I was stressed. I do not miss feeling like I needed permission to exist comfortably in my own space. So here I am asking strangers because my head is a mess. Was I wrong to end things when I did? Was the glass of water really enough reason? Or was it just the last straw in something that was already broken? Update: my relationship ended over a glass of water, and I still can't believe that's what finally broke it. I did not expect to write an update, but a lot has happened and my perspective has shifted in ways I did not see coming. After the breakup, I stayed with my brother Michael longer than planned because going back to the apartment felt overwhelming. Lauren and I were still on the lease together, and the idea of facing her or even being in that space made my chest tighten. For the first few days, I was mostly numb. I replayed the water conversation over and over, and every time I wondered if I should have just swallowed my feelings like I had so many times before. Lauren kept texting me in short bursts. One message would be angry and sarcastic, and the next would be sad and apologetic. She kept saying she did not understand how things escalated so quickly and that I blindsided her. I eventually agreed to meet her in public to talk because I wanted closure, and also because I needed to sort out logistics. We met at a coffee shop near our place. She looked tired and defensive at the same time. The first thing she said was that she had told her parents, and they were shocked I would end a long relationship over something so stupid. Hearing that stung more than I expected. I tried again to explain that it was not about the water. I gave specific examples from the past few years. I talked about the dishwasher, the towels, the constant commentary, and how it made me feel incompetent in my own home. She listened, but I could tell she was waiting for her turn to respond. When she did, she said she thought those things were normal and that her mom did the same stuff growing up. She said she assumed that was what being responsible looked like. That was the first time I saw a crack in her certainty. She admitted she had anxiety about things going wrong and that controlling small details made her feel safe. I told her I wish she had trusted me enough to talk about that instead of turning me into a project to manage. She started crying and said she never meant to hurt me. For a moment I wondered if this was the point where we would agree to try again. Then she said something that settled it for me. She said she still thought I overreacted and that if I came back, we would just need better communication. She never actually said she would stop the behavior. She framed it as something we would both need to adjust to. I realized then that even if she understood my feelings intellectually, she did not really accept them. She still saw the problem as my reaction, not her actions. That made me feel tired in a deep way. I told her I cared about her, but I did not want to live the rest of my life negotiating whether I was allowed to drink water without commentary. After that conversation, I went back to the apartment with her to pick up more of my things. Being there felt surreal. Without her hovering, I noticed how quiet it was and how much lighter I felt. She followed me around offering help and pointing out what I might forget. Even then, she could not help herself. We agreed that she would keep the apartment and I would officially move out. I found a small one-bedroom closer to my job and signed the lease last week. Setting up my own space has been strangely emotional. The first night I sat on my couch with a glass of water on the coffee table without a coaster just because I could. I did not spill it, and even if I had it, would have been fine. Something else unexpected happened. A few mutual friends reached out after Lauren told her version of the story. When I explained my side, several of them admitted they had noticed how she treated me. One friend named Jason said he always felt tense at our place because Lauren corrected everyone constantly. Hearing that made me feel less crazy. Lauren and I still talk occasionally, but the tone has changed. She asked me recently if I would consider couples counseling. I told her I think counseling would be good for her, but I am not interested in reopening the relationship. She did not take that well, but she did not argue as much as I expected. The biggest change is internal. I am noticing how often I second guess myself in small ways, and how that habit did not start with the breakup. It started years ago. I am working on unlearning it. I started seeing a therapist, and she said something that stuck with me. She said sometimes the thing that ends a relationship is not dramatic or explosive, but quietly clarifying. I still feel sad sometimes. I miss Lauren as a person, and I miss what I thought our future would be. But I do not miss the constant low-level stress. I do not miss feeling managed. The glass of water was not the reason I left. It was just the moment I finally listened to myself. Stories number 10. My relationship ended overnight after I asked my boyfriend to move out and set boundaries about his dog and money. I am writing this because my head is spinning and everyone around me has an opinion, and I need a place to lay out what actually happened from my perspective. I am a 31-year-old woman living in North Carolina, and until recently, I was in a 3-year relationship with my boyfriend Trevor, who is 33. We lived together for a little over a year in a house I own that I bought before we met. When Trevor moved in, we agreed on a few basic things. He would pay a set amount toward utilities and groceries. The mortgage was mine. We would split shared expenses evenly. His dog Max would be his responsibility. Max is a large high-energy mix with anxiety issues, and I was very clear from day one that I liked dogs but did not want to be the primary caretaker. For the first few months, things were fine. Trevor paid on time. Max was loud but manageable. Trevor had a steady job working construction with his cousin Ryan, and I work in healthcare with long shifts. We talked about the future casually. Nothing felt urgent or dramatic. Slowly, things started slipping. Trevor would forget to send money until I reminded him. Then it became partial payments. Then excuses. A delayed paycheck. A slow week. A tool he had to replace. I covered the difference without making a big deal because relationships are not transactional to me, and I assumed it would balance out. At the same time, Max became a bigger issue. Trevor started leaving for work earlier and coming home later. Max would be crated for 10 hours at a time. He chewed through 2 crates and scratched up a door. Trevor promised to enroll him in training. He never did. I ended up being the one walking Max between shifts because I could not stand the idea of the dog suffering, even though it was never supposed to be my job. I tried to talk about it calmly. I asked Trevor to either adjust his schedule or hire a dog walker. He said money was tight and asked if I could just help out more since I was already home some days. That was the first time I felt something shift inside me. Helping out had turned into expectation. The money conversations got worse. Trevor stopped paying for groceries entirely and would eat whatever I bought. He would Venmo me $20 here and there like it was generous. When I brought up the original agreement, he accused me of nickel and diming him and said couples do not keep score. I felt guilty and backed off again. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. I had worked a double shift and came home exhausted. The house smelled awful. Max had gotten into the trash and there was food everywhere. He had also had an accident on the rug in the living room. Trevor was not home. He had gone out for drinks with Ryan and some friends. I cleaned up because I could not stand it. While I was scrubbing the rug, I realized this was my house, and I was cleaning up after a dog I did not agree to care for while financially supporting a grown man who was living far beyond his means. I sat on the floor and cried harder than I have in years. When Trevor came home, I asked him to sit down. I told him we needed to talk about money and Max and expectations. He rolled his eyes before I even finished my first sentence. That set me off. I told him I felt taken advantage of. I told him I was burned out. I told him I needed changes immediately. He got defensive fast. He said I knew he was struggling and that if I loved him, I would be more understanding. He said I was lucky to have a good job and a house and that I did not understand how hard things were for him. He said Max was family and I was being heartless. I said something that surprised even me. I said this is not working and I need you to move out. He laughed at first. He thought I was bluffing. When he realized I was serious, he got angry. He accused me of throwing him out with no notice. He said I was controlling and cold. I told him I would give him 2 weeks. He said that was unacceptable and that I was legally obligated to give him 30 days. That is when the legal side clicked for me. I told him he was not on the mortgage or any lease and that he was a guest who contributed sporadically. I said I would still be reasonable, but I needed him gone. The next day I spoke to a coworker named Alicia, whose sister is a paralegal. I also consulted a local tenant hotline. Both confirmed that while laws vary, Trevor had very limited tenant rights in this situation. That gave me clarity, even though it made me feel like a villain. I told Trevor he needed to be out by the end of the week. I also told him Max could not stay past that point because I was not willing to be responsible for him any longer. I offered to help him find a temporary place or storage for his things. He refused all of it and told mutual friends I was kicking him and his dog out onto the street. The fallout was immediate. His friend Megan texted me a long message about empathy and compassion. Ryan left a voicemail accusing me of ruining Trevor's life. My own friend Danielle asked if I had overreacted. I started questioning myself constantly. Trevor packed angrily and barely spoke to me. On his last night, he told me I would regret this and that no one would put up with me long term if this was how I handled conflict. That sentence hurt more than I expected. Since he left, the house is quiet. Too quiet sometimes. Max is gone. The floors are clean. My bank account is stable again. I feel relief and grief at the same time. I miss the good parts of Trevor. I do not miss who I became trying to hold everything together. I keep replaying the moment I asked him to leave and wondering if there was a softer way. I wonder if giving more time would have changed anything or just delayed the inevitable. I know I set firm boundaries around money and the dog because I had to. I also know people see that as cold when a relationship ends suddenly. I am not asking for validation as much as perspective. I ended a relationship. I asked my boyfriend to move out immediately. I set boundaries around finances and a dog that was not mine. I am trying to figure out if that makes me unreasonable or if it just means I finally chose myself. Update: my relationship ended overnight after I asked my boyfriend to move out and set boundaries about his dog and money. I wanted to come back and explain what happened after Trevor moved out, because a lot changed very quickly, and some of it surprised me. I am still emotionally tired, but I feel more grounded than I did when I first wrote. The first few days after he left were rough. Trevor did not go quietly. He kept texting me asking for more time. Then he asked for money to help with a deposit somewhere. Then he asked if Max could stay with me temporarily while he figured things out. Every message made my stomach drop. I stuck to my boundaries even though it felt awful. I told him no. I told him I could not keep rescuing him from situations he helped create. He stayed with Ryan at first. That arrangement lasted less than a week. Ryan texted me later and said Max destroyed part of his garage, and Trevor was barely contributing there either. That was the moment my guilt cracked a little. I realized the issues did not magically appear because I was mean or impatient. They followed Trevor wherever he went. About 10 days after he moved out, Trevor asked to meet in public to talk. We met at a coffee shop. He looked exhausted and angry at the same time. He told me he felt blindsided and betrayed. I told him I had been asking for changes for months and that I finally hit a wall. For the first time, he did not interrupt me. He admitted he had been leaning on me financially more than he realized. He said he felt ashamed, and instead of dealing with it, he avoided it. He also admitted Max was more than he could handle, but said giving up the dog felt like failing. That conversation was calmer than anything we had near the end, but it did not change my decision. I told him I did not want to get back together. I told him I needed distance to heal. The legal side came up again when he asked if he could come back to grab a few things he forgot. I agreed, but insisted on being home and having my friend Danielle there. Trevor rolled his eyes, but complied. That visit was uncomfortable, but uneventful. After that, I changed the locks. Doing that made my hands shake, but it also made me feel safe in a way I had not felt in months. The biggest shift happened with Max. Trevor eventually rehomed him with a rescue foster family through a group Megan connected him with. I cried when I heard that even though Max was not my responsibility, I was relieved he was somewhere stable. Trevor accused me of forcing his hand. I did not respond. I knew engaging would only pull me back into the cycle. Some friendships did not survive this. Megan stopped talking to me completely. Ryan still thinks I am heartless. On the other hand, a few people quietly told me they were impressed I stood my ground. Alicia said something that stuck with me. She said boundaries feel cruel to people who benefit from you not having any. I also sat down and looked honestly at my finances. I realized how much extra I had been covering without even tracking it. Seeing the numbers made me angry at myself, but also strangely proud that I caught it before things got worse. I started a separate savings account just for peace of mind. Emotionally, I am still untangling things. Some nights I miss Trevor terribly. I miss the way he used to make me laugh and how he would rub my shoulders when I was stressed. Other nights I feel light in a way I have not felt in years. The house feels like mine again. I cook what I want. I do not brace myself when I walk through the door. Trevor sent one last message a few weeks ago saying he hoped I realized one day that relationships require sacrifice. I did not reply. I think I finally understand that sacrifice without balance turns into resentment, and that is not love. I am not saying I handled everything perfectly. I could have spoken up sooner. I could have been firmer earlier instead of letting things slide until they exploded. But I do not regret ending the relationship or asking him to leave. I needed to choose stability over chaos and self-respect over fear of being judged. I am learning that setting boundaries will always upset people who were comfortable crossing them. That does not make the boundaries wrong. It just makes them necessary. Stories number 11. My ex died, and I want people to know what he really did to me. I never imagined I would be writing something like this, and I honestly don't know how to carry all of these feelings at the same time. I'm a 29F, and my ex-boyfriend Daniel was 31M when he passed away a few months ago. We dated for almost 4 years and broke up a little over a year before his death. From the outside, Daniel was the kind of guy people loved. He was funny, charismatic, successful, and always willing to help others. Since he died, everyone talks about him like he was a saint. The problem is that the man they are mourning is not the man I knew behind closed doors. When Daniel and I first met in Austin, he was charming in a way that felt magnetic. He made me feel chosen. He was attentive and affectionate and constantly told me how lucky he was to have me. Friends told me I'd hit the jackpot. My parents liked him. I believed I was safe with him. Looking back, that early intensity should have been a warning, but at the time it just felt like love. The cracks didn't show all at once. They came slowly and quietly. Daniel was controlling in ways that were easy to excuse at first. He'd question who I was texting and say he was just curious. He'd get irritated if I went out with friends without him and say he missed me too much. He'd comment on my clothes and suggest outfits he thought looked better on me. When I pushed back, he'd say I was being defensive and that he only cared because he loved me. Over time, his words became sharper. If I disagreed with him, he'd say I was being dramatic or irrational. If I cried, he'd accuse me of manipulating him. Arguments always ended with me apologizing just to restore peace. He never hit me, which is something people latch onto when I try to explain why it was bad. But he chipped away at me piece by piece. He made me doubt my memory, my reactions, my worth. The last year of our relationship was the worst. Daniel would give me the silent treatment for days if I upset him. He threatened to leave and then accused me of abandonment issues when I begged him to stay. He once told me no one else would put up with me the way he did. I started to believe him. I felt small and trapped and ashamed for not being able to make things work. The breakup happened after one final argument where he told me I was lucky he even tolerated me. Something in me finally snapped. I packed a bag and left that night. The months after were hard but freeing. With distance, I started to understand that what I experienced was emotional abuse. Therapy helped me name things I'd been minimizing for years. I was slowly rebuilding myself. Then I got the call that Daniel had died. I won't share details out of respect for his family, but his death was sudden. Overnight, my phone filled with messages from people who knew we used to be together. Some offered condolences. Others told me how devastated they were. Social media exploded with tributes. People shared photos and stories about how kind and generous he was. Someone even posted about what a great partner he had been to me. Reading those posts made me feel sick. I felt like I was screaming inside while everyone else was rewriting history. I didn't want him to be dead. I didn't wish that on him. But I also can't stand the idea that he gets to be remembered as a perfect man while the damage he caused disappears with him. It feels deeply unfair that his reputation is protected by death while my pain is expected to stay silent out of politeness. I've kept my mouth shut so far. When people mention him to me, I nod and say something neutral. When they praise him, I stay quiet. Inside, I'm boiling. I want to tell them that he wasn't always kind, that he could be cruel and manipulative, that the relationship they admired from the outside nearly broke me. I want to scream that someone can be loved by many and still be terrible to one person. The guilt is overwhelming. I feel like a monster for even thinking these things. He's dead. He can't defend himself. His parents are grieving. His friends are hurting. I understand all of that. At the same time, I'm still here living with the consequences of what he did. I'm the one who wakes up from nightmares. I'm the one who flinches at certain phrases. Why does his death mean my truth no longer matters? A few weeks ago, I ran into one of his close friends, Brian, at a coffee shop. He hugged me and told me Daniel had always spoken so highly of me. He said Daniel regretted losing me and that I was the one that got away. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom because I felt like I was going to throw up. That version of events felt like another layer of gaslighting, even after Daniel was gone. I've talked to my friend Natalie about this, and she's torn. She understands my anger, but worries about the fallout if I say anything publicly. She said people might accuse me of lying or say I'm bitter. My brother Kevin is more blunt. He says I don't owe silence to anyone, and that protecting Daniel's image shouldn't come at the cost of my healing. I keep going back and forth. Part of me wants to make a post or tell people directly what our relationship was really like. Not out of revenge, but out of truth. Another part of me worries that doing so would make me look cruel and heartless. I don't want to hurt his family. I don't want to become the villain in a story where he's already been canonized. At the same time, staying silent feels like betraying myself. It feels like letting him control the narrative one last time. I didn't get closure when we broke up, and I definitely didn't get it with his death. I'm carrying anger, grief, relief, and guilt all at once, and it's exhausting. I'm not looking to ruin his life. His life is already over. I just want space for my experience to exist without being erased. I want people to understand that someone can be gone and still have caused harm. I don't know if wanting that makes me cruel or honest. So I'm stuck. Do I keep my head down and let the world remember him however it wants? Or do I speak up and risk being judged for telling an uncomfortable truth about someone who can no longer respond? I don't know where the line is between protecting the dead and silencing the living. I just know that pretending he was someone he wasn't is starting to feel like another kind of lie I'm being forced to live with. Update. My ex died, and I want people to know what he really did to me. I waited a while before writing this because everything felt raw, entangled, and I didn't want to react purely out of anger. Since my original post, I've been sitting with the question of whether silence was protecting others or just continuing to hurt me. What finally pushed things forward wasn't a dramatic moment, but a quiet one that left me shaking. About 2 weeks after I posted, Daniel's sister reached out to me. Her name is Melissa. We were never close, but we were friendly when Daniel and I were together. She asked if we could talk. My first instinct was panic. I worried she was angry or that she wanted reassurance about how wonderful he was. I almost didn't respond, but something told me avoiding it would only make things worse. We met at a park near where she lives. She looked exhausted and older somehow. She told me she'd been sorting through Daniel's things and came across old messages and journals that confused her. She said she didn't want details, but she wanted to know if Daniel and I were really as happy as everyone thought. That question hit me like a wave. I didn't unload everything. I didn't list incidents or vent rage. I told her the truth in a measured way. I said that our relationship was complicated and that while there were good moments, there were also unhealthy dynamics that hurt me deeply. I told her I had been in therapy because of it. I made it clear I wasn't trying to attack him or rewrite his life, just explain my experience. Melissa went quiet for a long time. Then she told me something I wasn't expecting. She said Daniel had a pattern of intense relationships that always ended badly, and that I wasn't the first woman who had distanced herself completely afterward. She said the family never talked about it because Daniel framed every breakup as being abandoned or misunderstood. Hearing that made my chest ache in a strange mix of validation and sadness. She thanked me for being honest. She said it helped her understand some things she'd always brushed aside. She didn't ask me to stay silent. She didn't ask me to defend him either. She just said she hoped I would take care of myself. That conversation changed something in me. Not long after that, I was added to a group chat with some of Daniel's old friends who were planning a memorial get-together. One of them, Ethan, posted a long message about how Daniel was the best partner any woman could ask for and how he treated me like gold. My hands were shaking reading it. For the first time, instead of swallowing it, I replied. I didn't argue. I didn't insult Daniel. I wrote a short message saying that while I understood everyone was grieving, that description didn't reflect my experience and that our relationship was not healthy for me. I said I wasn't going to go into details, but I asked that people stop using my name as proof of a narrative that wasn't true. The reaction was mixed. A few people messaged me privately to say they were sorry and that they had no idea. One person accused me of being bitter and said it was inappropriate to speak ill of the dead. That hurt, but it didn't crush me the way it might have before. I realized that no matter what I said, some people would protect the version of Daniel they loved because it was easier. What surprised me most were the messages from two women I barely knew. One was named Rachel, a former coworker of his. The other was Olivia, someone he dated briefly before me. Both told me they had similar experiences and felt relieved that someone finally said something out loud. Reading those messages made me cry in a way that felt like release instead of despair. I never made a public post. I never blasted him on social media. I decided that wasn't what I needed. What I needed was permission to stop lying when his name came up. Now, when people talk to me about him, I don't praise or condemn. I say our relationship was difficult and that I'm still healing. If they press, I say I'm not comfortable discussing details. That boundary alone has been empowering. Therapy has shifted too. Instead of focusing solely on surviving what happened, I'm now working on reclaiming my voice and trusting my reality. My therapist helped me understand that speaking my truth isn't the same as smearing someone's name. Intent matters. Context matters. And my healing matters too. I still feel guilt sometimes. I still think about his parents and how much they miss him. I still wish things had been different. But I no longer feel like I have to carry his image on my back at the expense of my own sanity. His death does not erase what I lived through. It also doesn't require me to become cruel or vengeful. What I've learned is that there is a middle ground between silence and destruction. I don't owe the world a story that makes everyone comfortable. I owe myself honesty. Daniel can be remembered for the good he did for others, and I can acknowledge the harm he did to me. Both can exist, even if it makes people uneasy. I don't feel like a monster anymore for wanting the truth to be acknowledged. I feel like a person who finally stopped shrinking. I don't know if everyone will ever understand my choice, but I'm starting to understand it myself. And for the first time since his death, that feels like real progress. Final update. My ex died, and I want people to know what he really did to me. It's been several months since my last update, and I wanted to wait until things settled before writing again. I didn't want to post from a place of raw emotion or prove a point to anyone. I needed time to see what speaking up in small ways would actually change in my life, not just in my head. The biggest change is that the constant buzzing anger is gone. It didn't disappear overnight, but it slowly loosened its grip. Once I stopped censoring myself out of fear of how it would look, my body stopped being in a constant state of tension. I hadn't realized how much energy I was using to keep my truth buried. Letting it exist, even quietly, gave me more peace than I expected. After my last post, I had one more significant conversation that closed a chapter I didn't know was still open. Daniel's mother reached out to me. Her name is Patricia. I won't lie, my heart dropped when I saw her name pop up. I debated ignoring it for days. Eventually I responded because I knew avoiding her would haunt me more than talking to her. We met at her house. She was kind and fragile and very clearly grieving. She didn't accuse me of anything. She told me she'd heard conflicting things and wanted to understand why Daniel and I really ended. She said she wasn't looking for comfort and she wasn't looking for blame. She just wanted honesty. I told her the same thing I told Melissa, that I cared about Daniel once, that there were good moments, but that our relationship hurt me in ways that took a long time to understand. I didn't use labels. I didn't list examples. I spoke about how small I became and how confused I felt by the end. Patricia cried quietly and said she wished she had known more while he was alive. She didn't defend him. She didn't invalidate me. She thanked me for not pretending. That conversation gave me more closure than I thought I was allowed to have. Since then, people have mostly stopped bringing him up to me. When they do, it's gentler and less performative. I think setting boundaries early changed the tone. The ones who wanted a polished story drifted away. The ones who mattered stayed. I no longer feel like I'm bracing myself every time his name is mentioned. I also made a decision about how I want to carry this forward. I'm not going to be the keeper of his legacy or the destroyer of it. I'm just going to be honest when asked and quiet when not. I don't owe commentary. I don't owe protection. I don't owe punishment either. That balance feels right to me now. Therapy has helped me see something important. Wanting the truth acknowledged was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming my reality after years of being told it was wrong. Once I stopped framing my feelings as something shameful, the urge to be loud faded naturally. I didn't need to shout once I stopped whispering to myself. I've also started dating again, slowly and carefully. Not because I was lonely, but because I finally trust my instincts again. The first time I felt uncomfortable with someone and didn't talk myself out of it was a small victory that made me emotional in the car afterward. I realized how far I'd come. If anyone reading this is in a similar position, loving someone who hurt you and then losing them forever, I want you to know this. You are not cruel for remembering the whole story. You are not obligated to preserve a version of someone that erases your pain. And you are not required to turn your truth into a spectacle to make it valid. I don't hate Daniel. I don't love him either. I've placed him where he belongs in my life, which is in the past, with clarity instead of confusion. That feels like the most respectful ending I could give myself. Stories number 12. My friend group is falling apart, and only one or two of them actually have a healthy marriage. I never thought I would be the person writing something like this, but lately I feel like I am losing my mind watching the people around me. I am in my early 30s, and most of my friends got married within a few years of each other. For a long time, I assumed that meant we were all entering a stable and calm phase of life together. What I did not expect was to slowly realize that almost none of these marriages are actually healthy. It started with small comments. A joke here about a husband sleeping on the couch. A sarcastic remark there about a wife checking her husband's phone. At first, I laughed it off like everyone else. It felt normal, almost expected. Marriage is hard, right? Then the jokes stopped sounding like jokes. My closest friends from college are Aaron, Mike, Lauren, Danielle, Chris, and Olivia. We all used to hang out together constantly. Game nights, cookouts, road trips. Once they started getting married, the dynamic shifted, but that is normal. What I was not prepared for was how often I would end up being a therapist instead of a friend. Aaron married his high school sweetheart, Nicole. From the outside, they look perfect. Nice house, cute social media posts. In private, Aaron vents constantly about how she controls every dollar he spends. He has to ask before buying lunch. She reads his messages. He shrugs it off like it is just how marriage works, but he sounds exhausted all the time. Lauren married Jake after dating for barely a year. I remember thinking they were rushing, but I kept my mouth shut. Now she cries to me about how lonely she feels even though she is married. Jake works late by choice. He forgets important dates. He tells her she is too emotional whenever she brings up issues. She keeps saying once they have kids, it will get better. Hearing that makes my chest tighten. Mike and Danielle are the loudest couple in the group. They fight openly. Group chats, parties, restaurants. It does not matter. They snap at each other like it is a sport. Danielle complains that Mike never helps around the house. Mike says Danielle is never satisfied. They both tell me they love each other deeply. I do not know how love is supposed to sound like that. Chris and Olivia are the ones I actually look at and think this seems healthy. They disagree, but they listen. They tease each other without cruelty. They support each other's goals. Being around them feels calm, no tension, no walking on eggshells. They are the exception, not the rule. What really shook me was a weekend trip we all took together. Too much alcohol, too little space, and suddenly everything spilled out. Lauren cried in the bathroom. Danielle accused Mike of flirting with a waitress. Nicole snapped at Aaron for telling a story she did not like. At one point, I was sitting on the porch with Chris while chaos unfolded inside, and he just shook his head and said, "This is not normal." That sentence stuck with me. This is not normal. Since then, I cannot unsee it. The way some of my friends talk about their spouses with resentment. The way they excuse behavior that would be unacceptable in any other relationship. The way they stay, because divorce feels scarier than being unhappy. Sometimes I feel like I am watching people slowly shrink themselves to keep their marriages intact. I am not married. I am in a long-term relationship with someone named Rebecca. We live together and talk openly about marriage. Watching my friends has made me both more cautious and more grateful. Rebecca and I disagree, but we do not belittle each other. We do not threaten or guilt or control. Seeing the contrast is jarring. Lately, my friends have started making comments about me. They say I am lucky I am not married yet. They say I do not understand compromise. They say I am idealistic. Maybe I am. But I do not think wanting mutual respect makes me unrealistic. What scares me is how normalized unhappiness has become. It feels like everyone is trying to convince themselves that this is just how it is. That resentment is part of the package, that once you sign the papers, you just endure. When I push back gently, they act like I am judging them. Maybe I am, but mostly I am sad. I love my friends. I want them to be happy, not just stable or socially acceptable. I do not know how to support them without enabling something that clearly hurts them. I do not know how to stay close without absorbing all this negativity. Some days I feel guilty for feeling relieved that my life does not look like theirs. Only 1 or 2 of my friends seem genuinely content in their marriages. The rest feel like cautionary tales no one wants to hear. I keep wondering if this is just my circle or if this is more common than anyone admits. All I know is that watching people settle for misery has changed the way I think about marriage forever. Update: my friend group is falling apart and only 1 or 2 of them actually have a healthy marriage. I did not expect my last post to hit me as hard as it did, but writing everything out forced me to stop pretending things were fine. Since then, a lot has shifted in ways I honestly was not prepared for. Some of it feels like growth, and some of it feels like loss. Not long after I posted, Aaron asked if we could grab a beer. It was just the 2 of us, which almost never happens anymore. He looked tired in a way I had not really noticed before. Halfway through the second drink, he admitted that Nicole checks his phone every night. Not casually, not jokingly, but line by line. He said if he complains, she tells him that if he has nothing to hide it, should not bother him. He laughed while telling me, but his hands were shaking. I told him quietly that this was not normal and not healthy. He did not argue. He just stared at his glass and said he knows, but he does not see a way out without blowing up his entire life. A week later, Lauren came over unexpectedly. She sat on my couch and cried until her face was red. She told me Jake forgot their anniversary again, and then told her she was making a big deal out of nothing. She said she feels invisible in her own marriage. When I gently asked her why she stays, she said because leaving would mean admitting she made a mistake. That sentence scared me more than anything else she said. Things came to a head with Mike and Danielle at a friend's birthday party. They started arguing loudly in the kitchen about something small. I think it was about money or chores. Danielle stormed out and Mike followed her, yelling. The room went silent. No one laughed it off this time. Later that night, Chris pulled me aside and said he and Olivia are stepping back from group events for a while because the constant tension is exhausting. I realized I was relieved to hear him say it. Rebecca and I talked a lot during all of this. I told her how conflicted I felt, how guilty I felt for judging, how heavy it felt to constantly absorb everyone else's problems. She reminded me that empathy does not mean self-sacrifice. She asked me why I felt responsible for fixing marriages that are not mine. I did not have a good answer. Since then, I have started setting quiet boundaries. I still listen, but I no longer validate behavior that feels wrong. When Aaron jokes about being monitored, I do not laugh anymore. When Lauren talks about staying unhappy for the sake of appearances, I tell her gently that she deserves more than survival. Some of them pull back when I do this. A few seem uncomfortable. 1 or 2 thanked me. The hardest part is accepting that some friendships may fade because they were built around shared denial. It hurts to realize that being honest can cost you closeness. At the same time, I feel lighter. I am sleeping better. I am less angry. I am no longer carrying everyone else's marriages on my back. Chris and Olivia invited Rebecca and me over for dinner last weekend. it was calm and warm and easy. At one point, Olivia squeezed Chris's hand while he was talking, and he smiled at her without even thinking about it. That tiny moment made something click for me. This is what I want. Not perfection, but kindness without fear. I still care about my friends deeply. I hope they find their way, whatever that looks like for them. But I am learning that watching people normalize misery does not mean I have to normalize it too. If anything, this whole experience has clarified what I am willing and not willing to accept in my own life. And for the first time in a while, that clarity feels like a gift instead of a burden. Update: my friend group is falling apart, and only 1 or 2 of them actually have a healthy marriage. I think this is the point where I stop pretending things might somehow go back to how they were. The last few months have been quietly brutal, not in a dramatic explosion kind of way, but in a slow realization that some relationships only survive as long as everyone agrees not to tell the truth. Aaron stopped reaching out as much. At first it was gradual, replies taking longer, canceled plans blamed on work. Then one night, he texted me after midnight, saying Nicole had found our messages where he talked about feeling controlled. She accused him of turning people against her. He told me she demanded he stop confiding in me. He said he was sorry and hoped I understood. I stared at that message for a long time. I told him I cared about him and that my door was always open. He reacted with a thumbs up, and that was it. We have barely spoken since. Lauren is still in my life, but she is different now. Quieter, more guarded. She admitted she stopped telling me certain things because every time we talk, she hears my voice in her head asking her why she accepts so little. She said it makes her anxious. That hurt, but I understood. When your coping mechanism depends on minimizing your own pain, anyone who names it feels like a threat. We still meet for coffee sometimes, but there is an invisible wall between us. Mike and Danielle finally separated. It happened fast and slow at the same time. One day, they were fighting like usual. The next, Danielle posted vague quotes about choosing herself. Mike messaged me saying he never thought she would actually leave. I listened, but I did not play referee. I told him I hoped they both found peace. A few weeks later, Danielle told me she felt calmer than she had in years. Mike moved out of state shortly after. The group chat went quiet. The strangest part is how some people quietly disappeared without confrontation. Fewer invites, fewer check-ins, no big blow-ups, just distance. At first I took it personally. I wondered if I had become judgmental or cold. Therapy helped me see that I did not change as much as the dynamic did. I stopped participating in denial. That alone was enough to shift everything. Rebecca and I had a serious conversation about marriage during all of this. Not a dramatic one, just honest. We talked about what we are afraid of becoming, about resentment, about complacency, about choosing each other actively instead of by default. I told her watching my friends scared me. She told me watching me set boundaries made her feel safer about our future. That meant more to me than she probably realizes. Chris and Olivia remained steady. They told us they missed parts of the old group, but not the tension. Chris said something that stuck with me. He said sometimes groups break apart not because anyone did something wrong, but because people grow at different speeds and in different directions. No villains, just reality. Looking back, I realized I was grieving long before things actually ended. I was grieving the version of adulthood I thought we would all share. I was grieving the idea that marriage automatically meant emotional maturity. I was grieving friendships that thrived on shared avoidance instead of shared growth. I still believe marriage can be healthy. I have seen it up close. But I also believe a lot of people stay in situations that slowly hollow them out, because leaving feels like failure. Watching that up close changed me. It made me more intentional, more honest, less willing to laugh things off that should not be laughed off. My social circle is smaller now. Quieter. Calmer. sometimes lonely, but it feels real. I no longer feel like I am carrying other people's unhappiness home with me. I no longer feel guilty for wanting more than endurance. If there is one thing I am taking from all of this, it is that peace is not boring and honesty is not cruel. Sometimes choosing yourself does not look loud or dramatic. Sometimes it just looks like stepping away and letting things fall where they may. Stories number 13. My breaking point was having to tell my grown boyfriend to wipe after using the bathroom. I never thought this would be the reason I ended a relationship, but here I am, single, tired, and still a little horrified when I think about how long I tolerated something that should have been an instant deal breaker. I am 22, I live in Missouri, and until recently I was dating Cole, who is 20. We were together for about 8 months, and for most of that time, I kept telling myself that love means patience, understanding, and growth. What I didn't realize is that sometimes love also means realizing someone is not finished growing in very basic ways. We met through a mutual friend, Marcus, at a small house party. Cole was funny, charming, and had this boyish energy that felt light compared to the stress of college and work. He worked part-time at a sporting goods store, and I was finishing my last year of school while working as a barista. We bonded over late-night food runs, dumb movies, and long talks about what we wanted in the future. When we started spending more time together, he was over at my apartment constantly. I have one roommate, Tiffany, who is my best friend from high school. She liked Cole at first. He was polite, helped carry groceries, and always said thank you. On the surface, he seemed like a decent guy. The first weird moment happened about a month in. I went into the bathroom after he used it and noticed something on the toilet seat. I tried to convince myself it was just water or something random. I wiped it and moved on. I didn't want to embarrass him or myself by making a big deal out of something that might have been nothing. Then it happened again. And again. Sometimes it was on the seat. Sometimes on the rim. Once, there was even a smear on the floor near the toilet. Every time, I cleaned it in silence, telling myself maybe he just had bad aim, maybe he didn't notice, maybe it was a one-time thing. After the 4th time, I finally said something. I tried to be gentle. I told him I had noticed the bathroom was sometimes messy after he used it and asked if he could check and clean up after himself. He looked embarrassed and said he didn't realize. He apologized and said he would be more careful. I wanted to believe that was the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next few weeks, it kept happening. Not every time, but often enough that I started dreading going into my own bathroom. Tiffany noticed too. She pulled me aside and asked why there was sometimes literal poop on the toilet. Hearing someone else say it out loud made my face burn. I talked to Cole again, this time more directly. I told him that it wasn't just about being neat, it was about hygiene and respect. He laughed nervously and said he guessed he just never really paid attention to stuff like that at home. He said his mom always cleaned the bathroom. That sentence should have ended everything right there. Instead, I stayed. A few days later, he used the bathroom at my place and then immediately asked me if I had any wet wipes. I asked why. He shrugged and said toilet paper sometimes wasn't enough. I stared at him, waiting for him to realize what that meant. He didn't. I finally said, "Cole, you need to wipe until it's clean. That's what everyone does." He looked confused. Actually confused. He said he usually just wiped once or twice and figured that was good enough. I felt like my soul left my body. I was standing in my own kitchen explaining basic wiping to a grown man who could vote, drive, and have sex. He tried to laugh it off, but I couldn't. I told him that this was serious and not funny. I said it was unsanitary, and it was affecting how I felt about being close to him at all. He promised to do better. Again, for about 2 weeks, things were better. Or at least, I didn't notice anything. I thought maybe he really had changed. Then, one night, I came home from a long shift, exhausted and cranky, and went straight to the bathroom. There it was, on the toilet seat. Fresh. I didn't even clean it. I just stood there, staring at it, feeling something inside me finally snap. I went into the living room where Cole was sitting on the couch, scrolling on his phone. I asked him if he had just used the bathroom. He said yes. I asked him if he checked after he was done. He said no. Not really. I told him to go look. He came back a minute later, looking embarrassed and defensive. He said he must have missed it. That's when I said it. I told him I was done. I told him I could not be in a relationship where I had to teach a grown man how to clean himself after using the toilet. I told him it wasn't about one accident, it was about months of the same problem and empty promises. He got upset. He said I was overreacting and that everyone has gross habits. He said love is about accepting flaws. I told him there's a difference between flaws and basic hygiene. I told him I didn't feel respected, attracted, or safe in my own home anymore. He started crying, real crying. He said he didn't know it was that serious. He said he would change, for real this time. He said he loved me. I felt awful, but I also felt strangely calm. I told him I didn't hate him, but I couldn't be his mother, his maid, and his girlfriend all at once. He left that night. Tiffany hugged me and told me she was proud of me. She admitted she had been uncomfortable in her own apartment because of it too. Hearing that made me realize how much I had normalized something that was not normal. I called my sister Renee and told her everything. She laughed at first, then got serious and said, "You didn't break up over wiping. You broke up over disrespect." My mom, Elaine, said something similar. She said a relationship is about partnership, not parenting. Cole has texted a few times since then, apologizing, saying he finally understands, saying he has been working on it. I haven't replied. Not because I hate him, but because I don't want to go back to a place where I ignored my own discomfort to protect someone else's feelings. I still feel weird telling people why we broke up. It sounds stupid until you explain the whole story, but the truth is, it wasn't just about poop. It was about boundaries, effort, and whether someone cares enough to change when you tell them something matters. I learned something important from this. Love is not supposed to feel like constant tolerance of things that make you uncomfortable. It's not supposed to make you dread your own bathroom. I don't regret breaking up with him. I regret not doing it sooner. Update, my breaking point was having to tell my grown boyfriend to wipe after using the bathroom. It has been a couple of months since the breakup, and life is finally starting to feel normal again in ways I did not realize I was missing. The first big change was how peaceful my apartment feels. I no longer tense up when I go into the bathroom. I no longer check the toilet like I am inspecting a crime scene. That alone has done wonders for my mental health. Cole tried to come by about 2 weeks after we broke up. He texted first asking if we could talk. I said no. He showed up anyway. Tiffany answered the door before I could stop her. She told him I did not want to see him and that he needed to leave. He tried to argue that he just wanted to explain himself. She told him he had already done enough explaining and that he was not welcome. I was shaking in my room listening, but I was also grateful she was there. After that, he sent a long message saying he had started paying more attention to his hygiene, that he finally understood how serious it was, and that he wanted another chance. I read it 3 times. I felt sad, angry, and tired all at once. I did not reply. I realized that even if he truly changed, I would always associate him with feeling gross, uncomfortable, and unheard. That is not a healthy foundation for anything. I talked about it in therapy. Yes, I finally started therapy. My therapist, Karen, helped me see that the issue was not just the bathroom. It was that I communicated a boundary many times, and he only took it seriously when he was about to lose me. She said that pattern shows up in a lot of unhealthy relationships. People wait until consequences are real before they care. I also learned how much I minimized my own needs. I kept telling myself I was being dramatic, sensitive, or mean. In reality, I was asking for basic respect. That should never feel like too much. Some of my friends were shocked when I told them the real reason. A few laughed, which hurt more than I expected. One of them, Brianna, said she thought it was kind of petty. I stopped opening up to her after that. But most people understood when I explained the bigger picture. My coworker Dylan said, "You didn't dump him because he was gross. You dumped him because he refused to care until it cost him." That stuck with me. Cole has not tried to contact me in about a month now. I hope he really does learn from this. Not for me, but for whoever he ends up with in the future. No one deserves to feel like they are dating a child. I have started seeing someone new, slowly and carefully. His name is Evan. We met through a friend at a game night. I am taking things way slower this time. I watch how he treats small things, like cleaning up after himself, listening when I talk, and respecting my space. It is weird how attractive basic responsibility becomes after what I went through. The biggest thing I learned is that love is not about enduring. It is about choosing each other in ways that show care, not just words. I used to think staying and being patient made me a good partner. Now I know that leaving when you are not being respected is also a form of strength. Sometimes I still feel embarrassed about the whole story, but then I remind myself that my comfort matters. My space matters. And if someone cannot handle the basics of being a respectful adult, they do not get access to my life. Update. My breaking point was having to tell my grown boyfriend to wipe after using the bathroom. I did not expect to come back and write again, but something happened that feels like real closure. The kind I did not know I needed until it showed up. About a week ago, I ran into Cole at a grocery store. I almost turned around when I saw him, but I froze instead. He looked different, not in a dramatic way, but like someone who had been forced to grow up faster than they wanted to. He looked nervous when he saw me, like he did not know if he was allowed to exist in the same aisle as me. He said my name quietly. I nodded. We stood there for a second like strangers who used to know each other very well. He finally said he just wanted to say sorry again, not to get back together, not to push, just to say he understood now. He told me that after we broke up, he moved back in with his dad for a bit. His dad made him clean the bathroom every week. Not just wipe the seat, but scrub everything. He said the first time he cleaned it properly, he finally realized how disgusting he had been. He said he felt ashamed, not because I left, but because he finally saw how little effort he had put into something that affected other people. He said he was not trying to impress me or win me back. He said he just wanted me to know that what I said mattered, even if it was too late for us. I believed him, not because of his words, but because of how he said them. No excuses, no jokes, no but. Just ownership. I told him I was glad he learned something, and that I hoped he treated the next person better than he treated me. He nodded and said he planned to. We said goodbye, and I walked away feeling lighter than I have in a long time. Not because he apologized, but because I finally felt sure that I made the right choice. Later that night, I cried, but not in a sad way. It felt like releasing something I had been holding too tightly for too long. Life now is simple in the best way. I go to work. I come home to a clean bathroom that no longer feels like a battlefield. I spend time with people who listen when I speak. I am still seeing Evan, slowly, carefully, without rushing into anything. He respects my space, my time, and my boundaries without me having to explain them more than once. That alone feels like a miracle compared to where I was. I used to think breakups had to be dramatic or explosive to be valid. Now I know some of them are quiet lessons that follow you into a better version of your life. I am not embarrassed by my story anymore. If anything, I am proud of myself for walking away when I realized love should not feel like parenting. If anyone reading this is stuck explaining basic respect to someone who keeps promising and never changing, please hear me when I say this. You are not asking for too much. You are asking the wrong person. Stories number 14. My roommate is a light sleeper, and after months of complaints, I told her to see a doctor, and now I feel like a villain. I am posting this because the situation in my apartment has become unbearable, and I genuinely do not know if I crossed a line or if I finally said something that needed to be said. I am 27, and I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a large U.S. city. I moved in last year with a roommate I found through a housing group because rent is expensive and living alone was not an option for me. My roommate's name is Brittany, and she is 30. When we first met, she seemed normal and friendly and a little anxious, but nothing alarming. During the first month, everything was fine. We both worked typical 9-to-5 jobs, split bills evenly, and kept mostly to ourselves. The problem started once I realized how extremely light of a sleeper she is. At first, it was small comments. She would mention that she heard me open my bedroom door at night. Then she mentioned she could hear my phone vibrate on my nightstand. I thought she was exaggerating or just adjusting to living with someone new. I apologized and tried to be mindful. Over time, the complaints became more frequent and more intense. She said my footsteps were too loud even when I was walking normally. She said the sound of me peeing at night woke her up. She said my alarm in the morning ruined her entire day even though it went off once and I turned it off immediately. She asked me to stop cooking breakfast before work because the sound of pans stressed her out. I tried to compromise. I bought slippers. I stopped watching TV after 9. I started using headphones constantly. I tiptoed around my own apartment like I was sneaking through a museum at night. None of it seemed to matter. She would still text me in the middle of the night saying she was awake because of me. The breaking point for me came a few weeks ago. I had a late shift at work and got home around 11. I quietly unlocked the door and went straight to my room. The next morning, Brittany confronted me in the kitchen and said the sound of the lock clicking woke her up and she could not fall back asleep for hours. She said I was inconsiderate and selfish. Something in me snapped, but not in an explosive way. I calmly told her I was doing everything I reasonably could and that normal living noises are unavoidable in a shared apartment. She said if I cared at all, I would adjust my schedule and habits to accommodate her sleep issues. I asked her how exactly I was supposed to exist then. She told me that when she lived alone, she slept fine, and that living with me was destroying her mental health. I said maybe the issue was not me but her sleep. I suggested white noise or earplugs. She said she had tried everything and nothing worked. She said the problem was external, not internal. That is when I told her maybe she should see a doctor or a sleep specialist, because this level of sensitivity did not seem normal. I said it as calmly as I could, and I genuinely meant it as advice, not an insult. The moment the words left my mouth, her face changed. She accused me of gaslighting her and implying she was crazy. She started crying and said I was attacking her instead of taking responsibility. She said I was blaming her for something that was clearly my fault. I told her I was not blaming her, but I could not keep shrinking my life smaller and smaller to meet impossible standards. Since that conversation, the atmosphere has been icy. She barely speaks to me except to complain. She told a mutual friend named Allison that I told her she was mentally ill and needed medical help. That is not what I said, but now people are looking at me like I crossed some major ethical boundary. I feel torn, because on one hand, I know sleep issues can be serious, and I do not want to dismiss her suffering. On the other hand, I feel like I am being held responsible for something I cannot fix. I am paying rent to live here, not to be silent like a ghost. I have started staying out later just to avoid being home, and that feels wrong too. I should not feel uncomfortable existing in my own space. I am also worried this could escalate into a lease issue if she complains to the landlord. I keep going back and forth in my head. Was suggesting a doctor an asshole move? Was it insensitive, or was it the most logical next step? I did not yell or insult her, but I did challenge the idea that this was all my fault. I am exhausted and anxious, and I dread going home every night. I need outside perspective, because right now I feel like no matter what I do, I am the bad guy. Update. My roommate is a light sleeper, and after months of complaints I told her to see a doctor, and now I feel like a villain. I did not expect things to escalate as quickly as they did, but once the tension settled into the apartment, it became clear that ignoring it was not an option. After the original argument, Brittany and I barely spoke for almost a week. We moved around each other like strangers, and every sound felt amplified, because I knew she was listening for it. The first real shift happened when I got an email from the landlord asking if everything was okay in the unit. Brittany had contacted him, saying there were ongoing disturbances affecting her ability to live peacefully. Reading that email made my hands shake because it suddenly felt official and serious instead of just a roommate conflict. I replied calmly and factually. I explained that I work normal hours, do not host parties, and have already made significant lifestyle changes to accommodate her sleep sensitivity. I emphasized that the noises she complained about were normal household sounds, and that I was concerned this was no longer a roommate issue, but a compatibility one. The landlord suggested a mediated conversation. I agreed because I wanted a witness and a record. Brittany also agreed, though she told Allison and a few others that she was being forced into it. We met in the landlord's office a few days later, and it was one of the most uncomfortable conversations I have ever had. Brittany explained her side first. She said she had lifelong sleep issues, and that sudden noises cause her panic and physical symptoms. She said she felt unsafe and unheard in her own home. The landlord asked what specific noises were happening, and when she listed them out loud, it sounded even more absurd than it felt living it. Footsteps, locks, bathroom sounds, dishes. When it was my turn, I explained everything I had already done to reduce noise and how it was affecting my mental health. I said I felt monitored and anxious and that I no longer felt at home. I clarified what I actually said about seeing a doctor and that it was not meant as an insult but as a suggestion because I had reached the limit of what I could reasonably change. The landlord asked Brittany if she had ever consulted a professional for her sleep issues. She hesitated and then admitted she had not because she believed the problem was environmental. That moment was quiet but heavy. The landlord said something that surprised both of us. He said shared housing requires tolerance of normal living sounds and that the apartment was not soundproof nor advertised as such. He did not take sides, but he was clear that expecting silence was not enforceable. He suggested either Brittany seek accommodations that worked for her or one of us consider moving out at the end of the lease. Brittany looked stunned. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. After that meeting, Brittany barely spoke to me again, but the tone changed. The complaints stopped almost entirely. She still slept with earplugs and a fan, but she stopped texting me at night. About a week later, she left a pamphlet for a sleep clinic on the counter without saying anything. A few days after that, she knocked on my door and awkwardly apologized. She said she had talked to a doctor and been referred to a specialist. She said she did not realize how much anxiety was feeding into her sleep problems and that hearing it from a professional made it harder to deny. She did not apologize for telling people I called her crazy, but she did say she was overwhelmed and lashed out. I accepted the apology, but I also told her I plan to move out when the lease ends. Not out of spite, but because I do not think either of us can fully reset after this. She looked sad, but nodded and said she understood. Living here now is calmer, but also emotionally distant. I no longer tiptoe. I cook when I want. I exist normally. The guilt I felt before has faded and been replaced by clarity. I realize now that I was not cruel for suggesting help. I was honest after being pushed too far. Allison reached out to me later and admitted Brittany had exaggerated what I said. She apologized for assuming the worst. That helped more than I expected. I still feel empathy for Brittany, and I hope she gets the help she needs. Sleep deprivation is real and awful. But I also understand now that empathy does not mean erasing yourself to make someone else comfortable. This experience taught me something important about boundaries and shared living. Compromise has limits, and suggesting professional help is not an insult when a problem is beyond what two roommates can solve. I am counting down the months until I move, but for the first time in a long while, I am not dreading going home. Update: my roommate is a light sleeper, and after months of complaints, I told her to see a doctor, and now I feel like a villain. This will be my final update because the situation has finally reached a point where there is nothing left to process in real time, and I feel like I can breathe again. A lot has happened since the last update, and while none of it was dramatic in a movie sense, it was emotionally exhausting in a very real way. After Brittany started seeing the sleep specialist, things improved on the surface, but the apartment never truly felt neutral again. She became quieter in her complaints, but more withdrawn as a person. We stopped sharing casual conversations completely. If we crossed paths, it was polite but distant, like coworkers who already gave notice. About a month later, she told me she had been officially diagnosed with an anxiety-related sleep disorder and was starting treatment. She said medication and cognitive therapy were helping more than she expected. She also admitted something that stuck with me. She said when she first moved in, she felt out of control in her life, and focusing on sound was something she could latch onto. Hearing that made everything click, but it did not undo the damage. She apologized more sincerely this time. She acknowledged that she put unrealistic expectations on me, and that she should not have told people I attacked her mental health. I appreciated that, and I accepted it, but I also told her I still planned to move. I explained that while I was glad she was improving, I had spent too long feeling tense in my own home, and I needed a clean slate. We coordinated the rest of the lease quietly and efficiently. There were no more arguments. The landlord was informed of my move-out date and helped with the paperwork. Brittany decided to stay and find a new roommate later. I think she understands now that shared living may always be hard for her, and she said she might look into living alone again when possible. In the final weeks before I moved, something unexpected happened. Brittany started making small efforts to be normal again. She would ask how my day was. She even joked once about how the refrigerator hum used to drive her insane, and now she barely notices it. There was no friendship revival, but there was mutual understanding. The night before I moved out, she knocked on my door and thanked me for pushing back when I did. She said if I had kept shrinking, she probably never would have addressed her issues. That was not something I expected to hear, and it gave me a sense of closure I did not know I needed. I am now fully moved into my new place. It is smaller and older, but it is mine. The first week, I kept waiting for anxiety to spike every time I made noise, but it never came. I play music while cooking. I shower late. I exist without thinking about how it sounds. Looking back, I no longer feel like a villain. I feel like a person who reached their limit and spoke up. I learned that being empathetic does not mean accepting blame for things that are not yours. I also learned that suggesting professional help is not cruel when a problem has gone beyond reasonable compromise. I do not hate Brittany. I actually wish her well, but I am proud of myself for choosing peace over guilt. This chapter is closed, and for the first time in a long time, my home feels like a place to rest instead of a place to perform.